So this is budget time, we're required to be done. Okay, councillors, we'll review the 223 submissions. Do we need to have a motion to take No, just proceed. Okay. So just proceeding on with item submission 48. Are we wanting to put into block form and continue to 52?
No.
Just a minute, please.
Item
Just a minute, what are we up to?
48. And there is a motion.
so can we resume the live stream?
Okay, so where are we up to?
So 48, and I asked the question if we'd like to put it in block form to 52, which is the original.
I'd like to make a motion on number 48.
Okay.
I have the wording.
Number 48, Councillor Rich has a motion he was put in relation to that.
It's an integrated transport plan that the council facilitate the development of an integrated transport strategy for West Gippsland. The council identifies this plan as a priority project for the council and South West Gippsland. The council jointly approached Casey, Cardinia, Borbor and West Shires for the support and other community and business associations. The council maintains the return of the rail as a priority project for freight.
Is that the amendment?
That's the amendment that I'm proposing.
That's the
motion.
Sorry.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
It's been sent.
It's been sent here. Yeah, clear. Well, I need it for other bits and pieces, so we've got to get it.
Copy there. So moved by Councillor Rich.
Do I get to speak on it?
And seconded by Councillor McKellan.
I have, as you know, I'm South Gippsland Shires representative on the seat.
Do you turn your microphone?
You know that I am South Gippsland representative on SEAT, South East Australian Transport Strategy Incorporated. The SEAT has agreed that this could be a useful project and proposition for us to be able to get external funding from the state and federal government to do with these projects. It's been suggested that we work collaboratively with the adjoining shires and be able to deliver a public transport system at a cost-effective way that we currently don't have. And I think that is worth investigation and having a plan in place for it.
We're just waiting for that to be able to be put up on the screen.
May I ask a question?
Not really. What is your?
I wanted to know what budget, what the budget is.
This is for the plan to change. It's not actually a budgetary requirement. It's actually just a request to change the plan to incorporate.
No, it's a $30,000 cost. Most of these plans end up, if you've got 6 or 7 councils, it's been done in the western state. They'll contribute around 30,000.
So we would have to investigate.
And the plan will be done.
I just have to wait for the word.
Just
So
wait
it's
for the word to
investigated.
get up on the
Well,
screen.
integrated transport plan.
I'm nearly there, council.
What's the vision?
It's usually cold over that side of the room. It's quite warm.
Yeah, give me to the other one. Yes, that one's going. Just open it from this.
Yeah. Councillor Rich, could you view that on the screen? Is that correct?
So the title is Integrated Transport Plan.
Don't you want it that the following changes be made to the council
No,
plan?
no, this is the motion.
This is the motion.
That's the change.
So there's no change.
This is the change for the plan.
I know, but it says no change to the
No,
council.
it's that no changes to the council budget be made and the following
Oh,
changes
beg
be
your
made
pardon.
to the council
Beg your
plan.
No,
I don't think
What you intended.
So Councillor Rich, please.
As I'm led to believe, it will take some funding to be able to do this. I think in the order of $30,000 or thereabouts. That has to be investigated and ratified. We're not asking for a huge amount of money. We're just asking that this be on our council plan and that a small amount of money be allocated on the council's budget to be able to facilitate what I think is a very important strategy in future transportation, public transportation and freight plan for South East.
Okay, there we have the motion up there. Okay, we have a second for that motion from Councillor McKeon, you wish to speak?
Yes, I will. I'll reserve, yes, okay. I'll reserve.
Your reserve,
Okay.
councillors,
Cardinia, Chair.
Councillor Edwards.
Casey, Cardinia, Board.
Thank you. I'm not against Great Transport to our region whatsoever, but I think I would.
Sorry, Councillor Edwards, so.
We're just double checking that the wording was correct, sorry.
It should be Cardinia.
Yes, Casey, Cardinia, Borbor and Basco Shire for the support of our community and business associations. Yes.
Is that now correct?
There should be a D in Cardinia.
Well, I did.
You may proceed, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I'm all for great transport to our region, and I enjoyed the train when it was here. I took it frequently from Leongatha when it went to Melbourne. However, I don't agree with spending more money on a study. I'd rather, I think it's fairly clear around most of our community that we're hearing that we would like to see the train back to an extent, at least. And if we narrowed it down and pinpointed exactly what our ask is, rather than putting money into another study, let's just go out there and advocate for the train to get back to Lang Lang. Let's make it simple. We want the train to get back as far as Lang Lang, at least. And if the airport goes into Kooree, we want it to go around there. Let's not fuss it around with another study. Let's actually put the resources and any money into actually doing advocacy where it counts and get something pinpointed on the ground. This is what we want. We don't need a study. We need to do something. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Edwards.
The way things should be done in local government is you should justify decisions on big expenditure or other budgetary items or things going to plan based on data. You can't say ignore getting the data and then just go and ask for things to happen. For the government to do something like this, they'll need our input based on data. They're not going to do anything if we say, oh, we want the train to come back. There's got to be a lot of work done, a lot of people, not just council, and there's a lot of work being done. We've got to justify $30,000 is minimal cost to get the data that you need for something. All right? So you can bear that in mind when we talk about something that costs $500,000.
Okay, Councillor. Councillor Skin.
Just got a few questions here. The first one, so I'm all for advocating for better transport. I think that's where we are absolutely struggling in this region. I think that is a really key link to our growth and our the ability of people to come and go from here, etc. So I have no problem with that. I think, as Councillor Rich already mentioned, he is the executive. I'm the executive of the South East Australian Transport Strategy. So we've got a really great advocate for our region's road and transport there. At the Gippsland Regional GLGN meeting that we went to last week, they were talking about the state and federal government funding in terms of rail, and there is support for that. There's also enormous challenges about the, I don't even know what they're called, but going around them and how and where, and they're dependent on the overpasses in getting level crossings in Melbourne, etc. So it's a long-term project from my understanding, and that was not near Leongatha. So I think I would love to continue advocating for better transport. I think there are already the Gippsland GLGN group. My understanding of that group, Mr. Mayor, is they're already advocating, and that was really clear from last Friday's meeting. So as the 5 neighbouring councils, which ones would be the different ones? So it was Ball, Bass Coast, Montrose, ourselves and Wellington. Yeah, so that's already going on there. I think that point D, oh, did it just change? Somewhere where it said return of the rail. Maintains the return of the rail. I don't think that's specific enough. So return the rail to where? And at the same time, we're talking about development of the rail trail along the rail corridor from Leongatha to Korumburra and from Korumburra to Nyora. So that sort of doesn't make sense. But I'm really happy to advocate for good transport. But I don't think, I think that's one way to go about it, but it's not the only way to go about it. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to comment? Councillor White?
This is a project where we're actually asking for this. This is asking for funding. 20,000 to 75,000, depending on the number of other councillors would contribute. We have got no resolutions from other councillors that they're going to jointly, that they're going to go in with this. This has been touted before. We've never had the other councillors say, we'll support this. And Casey and I don't support this because we've got a regional transport plan that the government did last year and accepted. We were mentioned in it, to upgrade a couple of bus services. This is just an independent advocacy group that wants to further advocate for the rail, and it is independent. And when we talk about maintains the return of the rail as a priority project, what are the implications of a rail trail as a priority project and the return of the rail on a single line track? And we could talk as much as we like about doing double stories. I've heard it all, and fencing it all. I'm certainly sure that there'd be very few people in South Gippsland that would like to see a corridor of fencing for the aesthetics and the animals. So I don't think this is a good spend. There's no commitment from the other council that potentially by moving this, it could cost us 75,000 impact on the budget when if no other council wants to contribute and wants to be part of it. Now when we talk about Casey and Cardinia Shires, it's a whole separate issue. They can't, the rail has been promised to go out to Clyde, what, 15 years in the making. We've heard it again, it's going to come, but it's still not there, and there's a long way to go. Maybe when it gets out so far, we could do something about this. I think this is, I don't think this is a good spend of our money. I don't support this, but particularly maintains the return of the rail as a priority project. I think there will be other projects that we may be able to achieve. We will not be able to achieve the rail as a priority in this term of council. Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors? No, you have to go before me, so just, I think the intent here is a good intent, but I believe there needs to be work done on the actual motion itself to help facilitate its intent. There's a lot of areas there which basically are open, sort of ended and could end up anywhere. So yeah, in that regard, the intent is good, but I can't support this particular motion. Thank you.
Did he? No,
We've already had that, you can't do a second one.
I'm not.
Councillor McKeon?
Sorry.
Any other speakers? Have you spoken previously? Councillor Edwards?
You go.
I was just going to add a little less.
You can't speak. But it's just spoken.
Have you spoken before? You have spoken before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's an old adage in planning, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. One of the biggest problems that we're going to be faced in south-west Melbourne is that the capacity of the Monash is at breaking point. There is going to be an additional 200,000 to 300,000 people moving into the corridor in the next 10 or 15 years. And there's two things. This is not just about the return to the rail. It's about an integrated transport logistics plan which involves buses, potential for train to add to it, and freight movements. The reality is, and this is why you have to spend money, the councils that have got projects into the Gippsland Regional Plan and the support of the LGN and the Committee for Gippsland have actually spent money on studies to justify it. The reality is no state government will fund anything now, or the Treasuries won't, unless there is a plan that identifies why you are going after these particular things. So it's not just the railway line, it's buses. The reality is at the moment, South Gippsland is massively disadvantaged in the investment in bus and public transport money, and we're doing a study on that at the moment, but we know that we're underdone, mainly because there was malfeasance in the transport department of a serious nature where people are in jail, and because that was connected to South Gippsland, no one's want to do anything about it. That's the reality. If we don't have a plan that identifies what the solutions are for movement of people and goods, and the critical one is our economy, there is a stranglehold on the Monash. If we don't get a freight logistics solution, it will get more and more expensive to get freight into the Port of Melbourne, and that's going to affect returns to our farmers and to our dairy products. And dairy products are the largest export by volume in the Port of Melbourne. This is lifeblood of our industry, dairy industry. It's not going to go away. We need to have some foresight about this. If we don't, we'll wake up in another 4 years' time and we will have done nothing about it, and the Monash people will then be running from 2 to 7 in the afternoon and a similar time in the morning. So the numbers are unequivocal. That's going to affect everything, not only buses, it's going to affect people driving to Melbourne, and it's going to affect freight movements. There's a few things that have been said which are just not true. Other councils have not been approached by this council because council refused to support this. The last council refused to support this initiative. Bass Coast gave indicative support to the transport group that they would actually fund it. We're talking about peanuts. But what we're talking about is levering investments. Currently at the moment, because we've never done any planning work, because we haven't got the studies, we get, can I say a colloquial term, Mr Mayor, bugger all money in the Gippsland Regional Plan and in the Gippsland Transport Plan. You can't rely on lobbying, because lobbying today is a sophisticated process. You need to have the data, you need to have the economic justification, you need to have the business case. There are 7 councils in the western part of the state that did a study like this. They got state government contributions. It's part of the Transport Act in the state that councils can participate in doing integrated transport plans. It's part of the Local Government Act that we can do it. If we don't do this, the problem that we've got is going to get bigger and bigger, and the cost to people and to businesses are going to be huge. So what you're saying is we shouldn't spend $30,000 on attempting to get an integrated transport plan because that's too expensive. Well, I'm saying it's the other way around we should be looking at. What is the cost to individuals who have to drive into Melbourne, whose travel time now is a half an hour longer because of the works on the Monash, but that's going to become the norm. What's going to happen to freight, Murray Goulburn and other people doing it? The reality is that there is a significant chance that we can get the return of the rail. We've already got close to 3,000 people on the South West Gippsland Facebook page, and we're aiming to have 5,000 by the end of this year. Governments are looking, both opposition and governments looking at the Clyde option, and there are other options. There is a huge amount, there's 80 BWs going out of Nyora with freight, with minerals going to both Melbourne and to the Port of Geelong. They cost a fortune on roads. We're commissioning some work from the Transport Group to look at what is the cost-benefit equations involved in allowing a deterioration of our roads, and some of those roads include our roads. BW is going down roads, and they are always overloaded. Well, not always, they say. The experience of people in the industry are saying they've got a 15, 16, 17 tonnes per axle load, which is just ripping up our roads. This is a small investment in being prudent and in planning to succeed, not in planning to fail.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Can I foreshadow a motion, please, if this one is lost?
It's too late.
I can at any time.
I've actually been, I'm a little bit disappointed by some of the responses of my fellow councillors.
Yeah.
I think that, for instance, some of the business cases involved in getting the rail back, some of the freight and getting real things happening, that's what we're talking about. Yet at the same time, I'm told that we should get it to Lang Lang or something without any knowledge or research or study. And I must say, everything must be done on the basis of proper investigation and proper research. So to, off the cuff, stare at Facebook for 5 seconds and give me a response whilst I'm at a council meeting is not good enough. We have a real prospect of being able to get proper freight and funding to this region. Funding from both the state and the federal government. So we're talking about a council plan, which is to say that we should have, and to me it's quite extraordinary, to facilitate the development of an integrated transport strategy. I'm quite gobsmacked we don't already have one. I think it's amazing that we are an economy, a regional economy, that produces and sells and exports all of our produce. And right now I'm trying to go into battle with my fellow councillors to say that perhaps we should have a plan through our integrated transport solutions. Then these plans should be a priority so that we can help facilitate the economic growth and development which each and every one of us has agreed to put in our council plan moving forwards. So we've all agreed that we want economic growth and development. We've all agreed that we can't increase our rates because of the COVID situation. So what are our other sources of funding? Our other sources of funding come from state government and federal government. They come from alignment. They come from working with other groups and other councils and other lobbyists to be able to go, how do we get this rail back? How do we get the right, because you realise that for the rail, the state pays. We pay for the majority of our roads. And those roads deteriorate over time, and that cost is not just a cost financially. It's also a cost when someone dies, because you've got a B-double coming down the other side of the road is now uneven, and you've dropped the speed limit and it's a little bit late, it's on the weekends, bang. All of a sudden we start to have a situation where we haven't sat here as a bunch of councillors and said, you know what, I'm not even asking for a huge amount of funding. I'm saying let's put a plan in place. Now, for instance, if those other shires don't come along to the party, then we've got nothing to spend. I haven't said let's go and do a freight train plan on our own. I've said let's come up with a strategic plan so that we can start working with both neighbouring councils as well as state and federal government to get the funding to this region so that we can make this place a better economy and region for our constituents and residents. So when I hear something along the lines of let's get it to Lang Lang, what does that do? We've got a real
I don't
prospect.
think anyone said that.
We have a real prospect of getting it back to Nyora. Freight is the only way we'd get the railway back. There's no money for passengers. I don't want to go into the business case because here all of a sudden is one of those few scenarios where we shouldn't be openly discussing these things, because guess who's going to start lobbying against rail? It's obviously the competitor. So therefore we can't be too open about it. We need to work out what is in the best interest of this region. How can we get funding down here to be able to expand our economy and the prospects and the future of this region? Not just for the people of today, but for the economy and the region of tomorrow. And all we're asking for here, all I'm asking for in this motion, is to suggest that we put this on our council plan and that we put a small amount of funding aside for the possibility and the prospect that we could be able to do these studies jointly with both VicTrack and that neighbouring shires. And I would have thought that every councillor in this room would have jumped at that opportunity to say, I think that's a great idea, and why didn't we have it in the past? So I'm going to ask you once again to think this through as to what is in the best interest of South Gippsland, and what is in the best interest of our regional growth, and how do we go about delivering that for the people of this region.
Thank you, councillor Rich. Put this to the vote.
No, I've actually said I'd like to foreshadow a motion if this one's lost.
So we need to go through the motion to see if
No,
it's lost.
No, you have
You need to listen, hear the motion first.
Just need to hear the full shadow.
Ah, to hear it, yeah.
That's all.
So the motion, if this one is lost, and this may sound radical, but hear me out on this one when we get to the debate, that council matches funds of crowdfunding, which will also measure and demonstrate community support, up to $5,000 to do a study and lobby government to get the train back to Nyora. No study, lobby. Well, you could do a study if you wanted to as well, but it's,
Just put it to the vote now.
that's a
No,
foreshadow.
that's a
If your
foreshadow.
motion, if your motion is lost, then this is foreshadow to put this one up. So you've got, you don't have to do an all or nothing.
Well, that isn't all or nothing, because who is going to do
Anyway,
that?
there's no
Motion,
debate.
we'll proceed with the original motion, and all those in favour of the original motion.
Oh, that one up in the
Go
board.
up on the screen.
Councillor McKeown, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rich, Councillor Keel.
It's really
Those
disappointing.
against?
Councillor Brunt, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Brown, Councillor Gento.
Okay, the motion is lost. We have the foreshadow motion.
Where's councillor Keel? Did you abstain?
Yeah.
For.
Should I have a seconder?
We need to move.
Yeah, I've just emailed it to you. So I'll just,
I cannot believe it.
Councillor Keel was for the motion, yes.
okay, so is it?
This is the foreshadowed motion. Councillor Edwards, that you wish to put forward.
Yeah, I'll just go back over the things and it's all up my screen, so let's pull that back up. So the foreshadowed motion is that council matches funds of crowdfunding, which will also measure and demonstrate community support up to $5,000 to do a small study and lobby government to get the train to Nyora. That's what
That's ridiculous. Get a second for it if you want.
The council matches funds of crowdfunding which will measure and demonstrate community support up to $5,000 to do a study and lobby government. So that would be, the total amount of funds, that would be 10,000, obviously 5,000 from community and 5,000 from council. To do a study and lobby government to get the train to Nyora.
You need a second.
Okay, we have a second of that motion as stated on the board.
For the purpose of debate.
No? No seconder, the motion fails.
A little
Thank
more,
you.
a little less.
Turn your microphone.
I'd like to move the original motion, that there's no change be made to the budget,
No change be made to the budget.
develop the plan, whatever.
Moved by councillor Brunt, seconded.
Seconder.
Seconded for the original motion. Councillor
Councillor
Edwards.
Edwards.
Councillor Brunt, wish to speak?
We talk about what sort of money would have to be put into the original, the proposal if we supported this. And it's 20 to 75, and that is dependent on how many councils wanted to pick it up. We have got no idea, and I believe the government has got, I mean the state, has got a lot more urgent,
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a formal motion to put it to the vote.
Formal motion to put it to the vote.
Yep.
Accept that.
yeah,
Yeah, accept that.
No,
yeah,
no, no.
Formal motion.
Okay, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour?
That's, this is, Natasha, this is the,
That the motion be now put.
yep, you've got a motion be now put, so we've got,
happy with that?
that is unanimous.
Okay.
Now I've got to put it to the vote.
Yeah, so, now put it to the vote.
All those in favour?
Councillor Brunt,
Sorry, what are we doing?
You're voting on item.
Are we voting on the motion got put and now we are,
If you
now we're
don't
voting?
need to vote, I believe, on the motion being output, you just go ahead.
Yes, and put it, the mayor decides it is correct.
And that's what you did.
I thought we were voting on it.
The mayor can decide if it's being.
Oh, okay.
It's been sufficient to vote.
So the vote, it was voted unanimous.
Yes. Are we wanting to move the next 49 to 52 in block?
No, like to speak to 51.
Okay, so we'll go through one at a time.
Can we just mention which ones?
So 49, 1.
49.
So we're talking about strategic planning from David.
I know.
50 is GIP sport and recreation. 51 is the Sandy Club
I'd like to
community.
speak to that one.
Waratah Way and the shared trail. So you wish that
I
one
would
to
like
be
to speak
separate?
to that one.
You want that one separate?
Just move forward.
So 49 to 50. We'll move as a block.
Second that?
Second, that, who was the mover?
You.
I didn't move it. Who was the
I'll
mover?
move
Move it, Councillor Rich, second Councillor Bell.
I move we put it to the vote.
Move put to the vote, all those in favour?
Unanimous, Mr Mayor.
449.2. It's important to note how we do is the amended wording.
We didn't amend anything.
There's no.
That changes to the council plan being made, the following change in made in strategy 1.1, under objective 1 in council plan. Develop a vision for sustainable growth and well-planned development of the Shire partnership with the community. So you just voted to accept that change in the council plan.
No, or.
That was crossed
Oh,
out.
yes, I see.
Do we do 49.1 or 49.2? I think that's the bit that's unclear.
So that's,
Mr Mayor, we might need to revote and just make sure that PACPOT's supporting 49.1.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and 49.2, that no changes to the council plan be made.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so strike that out.
So strike that out. Thank you.
is that,
Yeah.
the rest of your?
Yeah.
That was what's on here, yeah.
Yeah,
50
okay.
and again 50.1. No
Yeah.
changes.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
That's fine, I think that's correct, yes. So all those in favour, once again, those items.
Did we need a seconder on that? We didn't
No.
have.
That was the original,
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Councillor Rich was the second.
Well, it's not.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
So 51,
I'd like to move an amendment to 51.
yes, who was, sorry, who was that?
Me.
Not an
Councillor
amendment,
Edwards.
it's an
I did say
An alternate
councillor.
motion. An alternate motion is what I'd like to move.
So what is your alternate motion?
That council not consider this proposal unless and until there is a memorandum of understanding in place with all the affected landowners.
Do we have that wording?
It was sent to Jodie and Natasha.
council, not right. Yep.
That council not consider this proposal unless and until there is a memorandum of understanding in place with all the affected landowners.
Okay, that's the amendment. Do we have a second of that amendment? Which becomes a motion, is it? Councillor Branch?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, can I just seek clarification? Please forgive me, it's the end of the day. Is that impacting both plan and budget, or just the plan, or just the budget?
There's no budget allocation to it, so it's
Okay.
just the plan.
So it's just the plan. Thank you.
But we wouldn't be putting anything at all into it until
Is
either
there
way.
any change to the council plan because it's not
Half
in the
those.
council?
Okay, so
Is that just
Okay.
semantics?
sorry, Karen, will you?
Why have we got a Sandy Point camping grant? I'm just lost it. Oh, no, that's.
Someone made a submission.
That's all right.
I'll do
I think you're doing it in the wrong spot there,
So we're
Natasha.
only doing 51.
We're only doing 51.
51 is already,
So you, yes.
Anyway, can you
Because
speak to it?
yeah, because they're
I made a
seeking,
second if it was.
You
Oh, that's
did.
second.
No,
Councillor
Ladies
Branch,
Lorraine seconded it.
So,
I think we've got problems. The following changes be made to the council plan I don't think,
But it isn't in the council plan.
yeah, we don't, there's
The
nothing.
pathways and strategies, trails is.
52's coming up, isn't it? So it hasn't been? I want to put an amendment.
But we are jumping.
Deal with one first.
So we're dealing with 51.
It's not in the.
But it's not in the plan.
It's not in
As
there,
I said,
but
we've got problems.
they've asked, their submission asked us a number of things, that it says council's ongoing endorsement of the process, it's not endorsed at this point anyway, but, they've asked for, honouring a decision, establishing a proactive partnership thing, the council work with SPCG. So, the intent behind this is purely to make sure that before anything, any project, regardless of what it is or proposal, that there's a memorandum of understanding between all parties before they move forward.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
It's not quite right up there, I don't think. The following changes to be made to the council plan.
Doesn't make
We
sense.
don't, absolutely, councillor McEwen, that no changes to the budget or the plan be made, and we just note that council not consider this, the proposal, that's the recommendation.
Through you, Mr Mayor,
Yeah, and-
I know this is outside of standing orders, but the reality is it's not in the plan.
Yeah.
Therefore, this motion is redundant.
Yeah.
It's adding no value. What it's trying to do is have a discussion, which should be a briefing of council in the normal course of business.
Yeah. So the amendment is relevant to the actual motion at hand at the moment.
Hang
Does that make
on,
sense? Because it's not in the council plan, and we're not moving to put it in the council plan,
we are the part of the council.
No, we're not.
not moving to put it in the council plan, so, or budget.
Their submission asked for funds to be put, to be allocated in the 17-18 budget, that's what their submission was asking
Where do you
for.
want in that,
Mr Mayor, this is not in the council plan. This is the meeting about council's plan and budget.
Yeah.
Given that it's not in the council plan and we're not suggesting it should go into the council plan, therefore the motion, in my view, should be ruled out of order because it's not part of the business of this meeting.
Yeah,
what was it doing there then?
Sorry?
What was it doing
It has
there?
to be dealt with in an ordinary council meeting or in a briefing.
Because they've asked for money,
We're simply saying no to them at the moment.
if it goes through. Not a vote on it. I don't think you need the bottom, you do
I
that.
think I'll allow that amendment to council.
You can do it in the bottom one.
It doesn't see with the
It's not,
decisions that we've
there's
done.
no change.
Or what it's stated, so,
Because there was no money put in the previous drop.
Take it
yeah,
out.
taken it out, yeah, so we're reverting back to the original motion. There are no changes.
I'm happy to move that.
No,
And put it to
I've
the
had my
vote.
hand up.
Yes, you did have your hand up, councillor Skinner. Are you moving?
I'm going to be a bit of business. No, actually, my hand was up for a point of clarification, if that is okay, Mr Mayor.
Only in your speaking to
Only you speaking to Mrs. Sneyd.
so you have to wait.
Okay, well,
So
I'm
let's just-
I'm
Point of
going
order.
to move that there be no change to the plan or budget because it's not referred to
Okay,
it.
we'll have that motion. Thank you.
Which
However,
is the one I moved.
I'm finished. However, that it be included in the review of the Paths and Trails strategy.
No,
No.
we're talking about the budget and plan at the moment.
Yeah.
It's inappropriate.
So you'll move that we, no change to council plan.
Mr Mayor, I already
Yes, I'm well aware of that.
Yes, I think Andrew,
So,
council, if you.
Councillor McKeon, you've moved that, do I have a second?
I will second.
Yes.
You are second, councillor Smith.
Excuse me, I've got a hanging, are you ruling that you're not accepting
The amendment.
this?
That my one was
Meg.
not
Gone, so
accepted.
there's another 10 minutes to take it back.
Okay.
It's true though.
So moved
getting
by
ridiculous
councillor
the amount of
McKeon,
time.
seconded by councillor Skinner.
We just need to include it for the minute because
Yeah.
it was moved and seconded, so we just need to capture the words back here. And
Seriously.
capture them
Yeah, we
also
have
in
to
the
leave it.
Chair of the May that,
Yeah, but
that it's not been, it's been ruled out.
There it is.
So we can just keep that procedure going like first
Yep.
and then we can move.
6 o'clock, still got to get to Melbourne, still got to.
Okay, where are we going?
Okay, so we've, councillor McEwen has
Move that it be put,
Councillor
Mr Mayor.
Singer has seconded.
Move that it be put.
Moved to, we put to the, vote, all those in favour?
Do we have to say?
Yeah, we have
No,
to second it.
Alison was the seconder, I'm
This is
sure.
for no changes to budget, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't
We get
speak.
unanimous, we've got a
Yeah, we do have
unanimous.
another.
Moving on to 52.
52, I'd
Are
like
you
to.
sure you don't wish to put 52 in block form?
No, I'd like to put an amendment up.
That's also not in the council plan though.
That's why I want to put in the council plan. That's the amendment. That the Shire investigate caravan parks at Sandy Point as part of our council plan.
Your amendment is that the council's.
Do council include in the council plan the review of the caravan parks over in Sandy Point?
That's
It should be a
Yeah, that's
You
my
mean-
point.
No, it's not a review, it's an
Established-
investigation.
It's
The
an
council
investigation.
undertakes the
Look, we can
investigation.
need another one, and then that's the whole thing.
Excuse me, councillor Rich, I think you need to really, really clarify that very
Yes.
carefully because if you say caravan parks, I think that would be perceived as,
The current one.
yeah,
All right.
or even.
That the Shire investigate camping/caravan facilities within the Sandy Point
To establish.
to establish. Well, there already is one, but it's going to be closed pretty soon. That's the whole idea, is that it's going to be closed. And we
Policy
don't
on the
have.
way, is it, councillor?
It's not. That's why I've said.
So could you please state the motion?
If you're going to say that to me, I'm going to ask you to do the same to all councillors, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much. All right, so once again, I was out to ask that we include in the council plan investigation of camping and caravan facilities in Sandy Point.
Read what it says, and you better be happy with what it says.
The council.
Include in the current council plan an investigation.
Is it?
Caravan.
Something's wrong.
Well, that's not what I've said.
No,
That's
you
not-
said camping and.
Camping and caravan parks. I certainly wouldn't just, it's got to be the combination.
Excuse me, Mr. McAdams. Is this not similar to the one before? In that when we do the review of caravan parks, this will come up in it. It's the same as the one before.
Absolutely.
It won't.
Mr Mayor, point of order, none of this debate should be going on, none of this conversation should be going on. Could you please rule, just let him speak and then cut out
I
everyone
want to
else?
see what it actually is up on the screen, so I have that opportunity. So,
In Sandy Point, you don't need in Sandy Point caravan parks.
And investigation.
And an investigation.
It's included.
Yeah.
In Sandy Point or at Sandy Point, what's the correct language? At, not in. Wouldn't that be better language?
There's no costs to this. They don't expect it.
Was the plan, wasn't it?
Yes, it's the plan. It's to investigate the plan. No costs.
I think we could go and caravan. Might I ask you how many more we've got to do?
yeah, I think I'll accept that, given that it's in line with what was submitted, what was, and basically, yeah, includes into the council plan.
60, 61, too.
So do you have you got
I
the motion?
seconded it.
And councillor Skinner seconded it?
So I'd like to speak to this motion because as we, in Waratah Bay, one of our key tourist aspects in the region, we currently have a situation where it's been probable that the caravan park at Sandy Point will no longer exist. It's on private land and it doesn't actually, we can't actually affect the future outcome of what that is. There's a large spillover of people from Wilson's Promontory on an annual basis that comes back down through our region, and to not have a suitable caravan and camping ground at Sandy Point has been raised to me by a number of people in the Sandy Point community that may actually give them more sustainable business and visitation year round. So there's another number of reasons where all I'm asking for here is that we investigate it, we have a look at it, and we include this in our future economic and growth and tourism development strategies. So I hope that we'd support having this as part of our plan so that we can start to really do a structured plan for our tourism offerings in the Waratah Bay region.
Thank you, councillor Rich.
I will reserve.
Reserve. Any speakers?
I'd like to speak against.
Yeah, councillor Ross.
Mr Mayor. I'm not for or against the caravan park at Sandy Point, but I am against one potentially being run by council. So I would like to suggest that if there is a business case for a caravan park, that a business runs it. And that's all I've got to say about it.
Now, like I was saying, mentioned in there about application or council operating a caravan park.
No, that was.
No, investigation. That was all.
Anyway,
We're not going to do it today.
Yeah, thank you. Any other speakers?
Anyone else to speak?
Councillor Evans?
Right.
Councillor Ramos, did you just say? It's the end of the-
We have a caravan park at Sandy Point, and at this point in time, it's still operating. Maybe it could be part, if it is sold one day, it could be part of, well, it will be a rezoning, I imagine, of land. And I think that this is inappropriate to be doing it in through the council plan. It's a whole nother, it's a planning matter, basically, because there'd be land to be rezoned. Now, if there's a need for caravan to get sold and there's no caravan park, there'll definitely be a need. We'll probably have someone knocking on our door. I don't think that we need to do an investigation through the council plan. I think it's inappropriate, so I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, councillor Ramos. Any other speakers? Councillor Allen?
Look, I'm just going to say it's totally inappropriate to start reading things into that sentence about private companies and so on. It's not council, it's not private companies, it's an investigation of caravan parks and camping grounds at Sandy Point. Simple. We don't need to start pretending it's something else. I don't want the press to go away thinking that that private caravan park has been talking to council or anything, or that we're talking about them.
Thank you, councillor Hill. Councillor McKeown?
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, this has been raised by a number of people as a concern that if the caravan park closes, it's going to be a major reduction of economic activity and people buying goods in the stores and stuff. This is a sensible, prudent approach to simply explore, are there other options in the area? Officers can do this. There are some sites that are potential. It's not a complicated thing, but it would be an absolute disaster if we didn't have the foresight to look at this, given that we know it's on the agenda. It's got nothing to do with planning. It is simply saying, are there some sites in Sandy Point that could be suitable for a caravan park? And if there is, then a report would come back to council and then we would explore options. But certainly it wouldn't be my view that we should be setting up a council caravan park.
Thank you, councillor McKeown. Any other councillors? Councillor Skinner, you reserved.
Okay. Caravan parks. I think that wording is confusing, and in fact, I'm finding this whole process of looking at amendments to all of this through all those 67 submissions not the best way that we could be using our time. But anyway, I think that doesn't read how I believe it's intended to read. I think it's more about maybe working with the community groups to understand the feasibility of advocating for additional camping and accommodation facilities in that area. I think that's sort of the intent of what you mean by that, but I'm not sure if the words themselves actually make that sense, because it looks like we're launching into another caravan park situation. I understand that that's not the intent, but my reading of those words is that we could be treading on shaky ground here. So actually, I believe we can do that anyway. Which part of the actual council plan would it go into?
Economic development to
Just as a line item.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I support investigating it, I'm not sure about the words.
Councillor Rich, do you wish to sum up?
So I'd like to just sum up on that. We're not asking to close, we're not asking for anything, we're just actually asking to investigate and look at what the current capacity is, what the future possible. This, we need to have in our seaside towns, which are tourism and economic growth assets. Walkerville is a perfect example. The Foreshore Committee of Walkerville gets its funding from running its own caravan park. The Foreshore Committee at Sandy Point is sitting there with massive envy looking across at the one with Walkerville going, we only get $20,000 a year in funding from our boat launching, of which $14,000 a year goes towards actually labour. So they have $6,000 a year at the moment to be able to look after the foreshore area. So there are a number of successful models that are not cost imposts on us at the moment. Walkerville does not cost us shy of the money. We do not run that particular one, and that is a very successful model. Now there's a lot of other aspects that we're looking at in that region. Do we amalgamate these foreshore committees, this, that and the other? However, regardless, these are assets of ours for the future. That Waratah's successful, Walkerville's successful, and Sandy Point, which is one of the main towns in that region, currently doesn't have cheap accessible accommodation of a camping ground and caravan park. It has a caravan park, but it's not open very often. And if it is open, he's draconian, he really is trying to, and as I understand it, there's currently an application for him to close it, or at least to subdivide it. So therefore, once again, all I'm asking is that we put on our council plan the vision and the forthright ability to be able to say, what is in the best interest of this township? Let's have the discussion, let's have a look at it. Maybe we shouldn't have any caravan parks or camping grounds anywhere in the whole of the Shire. But I'm just asking to investigate it, and let's have a look at what that investigation comes about with the other end. That's the only thing I'm asking for this to go on the plan of.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. I'll put that to the vote now. That's the motion. Yes, Councillor Hunt.
I was going to vote.
Okay, you voted no. So all those in favour of the, as it sits up there,
It's Councillor Skinner, Councillor Gento, Councillor Keele, Councillor Rich, Councillor Hill, Councillor McKeown.
those against?
Councillor Brunt, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Brown.
The motion passes.
I'd like to move one for 53.
Okay. 1, 2,
What are we moving?
53.
53.
Which specific part?
Which, yeah, 53.1, 53.2.
There's only, 53 point, no, I'm putting my own one up there, so 53.2.
You're moving your own motion?
Yeah, yeah.
So what is
Ready to
the
start typing?
Is it in addition?
So
That-
just 53.
Is it in addition?
It's a new one.
In the list you've got.
53.
It's in the list I said. That council provide a monetary refund for 2017-18 to each rateable property equal to the value of the rate rise applied to that property for 2017-18, and that this be funded by drawing down on the general reserve funds, brackets, estimated value of 840,000 from general reserves around 3.5 million.
Point of order, Mr Mayor, this doesn't relate to the submission
No,
at
it's
all.
Yes, it does.
In
Which
53 point, could you explain which part it relates to, Councillor?
It relates to,
Wrong or less?
yeah, the submission on rates, overcharge rates.
Where is that though?
We don't have that here.
Ronald Weston didn't speak.
Yeah, it's about language, transparency, community engagement.
Can you stop having all the councillors talk, please, Mr Mayor?
Yes, certainly, I don't see where it relates to any item that Ronald Weston presented to council. Is there another, perhaps another area we propose to put that measure?
I would like to support the change to R.
So, the overall, I take that, councillor.
I could put that in 55, I believe.
Okay, so that's incorrectly placed. Okay, so reverting back, so I want to allow that motion, and that will move 53, point 1 and 2. Can I have a motion, please, that we, that no change be made to the council plan?
Excuse me, sorry. No,
We have a mover here.
can we break those two up so that we can, 53-1 and 53-2 are voted on separately then, if that's okay?
No, we just want to change the word.
We're just changing the word from his to our.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, yeah.
Yeah, that's all right.
And so I'd like to go to vote on that.
There's no change in the budget.
There's no change in the budget.
Either way, there's no change in budget.
There's no change in the budget, but it is to the plan.
So councillor Keels.
Well, we'll just vote for the two.
I'll
So
second it.
councillor Keels asking us to do 53.1
Keels, seconded.
for 53.1.
Aren't we taking out the bottom one?
Either way, there's no change.
But it's going to be used somewhere else, so don't delete it.
Yeah, it's cost,
Yeah, but I can't have it up there when it's voted on, or taken there.
Well, you want to 51,
No, but not
one
go
out,
to
to
53.
the council plan, so they
Yes.
can go both together.
Okay, so we clear on that?
Just leave the two together.
53, 1 and 2, there is no
That
change
becomes the motion.
to the budget. Happy May. Are you happy with that? Seconder
Yes?
was councillor McKeown. Okay, you wish to speak?
No, just let's change the
No.
word.
Yeah, no. Any other speakers?
Yeah, and then we take out the end.
We're voting on 53.1.
One.
Can't get it.
53.2. Yeah,
Andrew. Oh,
yeah, councillor McKeown seconded that. Councillor Keown.
We need to change
Put it
the
to
word.
the vote. All those in favour? Thank you.
Unanimous.
Okay, moving on. So, 54 to 61, I believe.
No, just 54.
It's 54. Plan submissions by Bill and Mary Lloyd Freeman. Yeah, but no change to council plan for budget to be made. Councillor Edwards, seconder. Councillor Skinner, Councillor Edwards, you wish to speak? Sorry, Councillor Edwards?
No, I said no, thank you.
And I won't do them. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else wish to speak on a particular one?
No changes.
Put it to the vote.
Put to the vote.
All those in favour? Thank you.
Unanimous, Mr Mayor, no changes to the budget or council plan.
Okay,
I'd like to move a 55.2, the wording from the previous.
55.2, so you're 55.2, but you're moving the motion.
55 point.
And I believe
I'd like to do 55.3.
Point of order, I don't think it fits on either.
So,
This is your extra part of here, is that right? The 50, are we up to 55?
what
Yeah.
what is your point of order?
As I understand, councillor Hill was wishing to put the extra part into 55, and I'm saying I don't think it relates to it either, into their submission.
No, it's for a rate reduction.
I've read it.
It doesn't say they're giving them money.
It doesn't relate to the submission.
55.
Yep. Councillor Hill wants to put up that.
And I have a 55.2 I'd like to propose.
Backing and the mayor's just assessing if he thinks it should be allowed or not.
Doesn't relate to
Well,
the
I don't
submission.
think
Doesn't
so.
relate to the submission.
No? What have we?
Is that, are you certain that's the area which places in, councillor Hunt?
Doesn't relate to the submission. It doesn't say anything about that. If he wants to deal with that, he can deal with it in open council as normal.
Can I respond first, councillor?
I believe there are a number of submissions who are complaining about the high rate rises and have asked for funds to be given back. So maybe we have to fuss around and keep looking at each one. Maybe it's in number 60, David Lewis submitted about giving money back to the community.
So
Would you agree that it should go into 60?
It's not in this one.
hang on, to a 60, instead of it actually fixed.
Can we just?
So we'll move in form or?
I have a,
Sorry, councillor Rich.
I would like to, put up one that's at the, under 55, which is Vincent Morfini,
Yeah.
that the service levels of the media unit be reduced by $100,000.
Yeah, speak in relation to services.
So the item that councillor Hill moved, was that lapse for want of a second? Or
Yes.
is that been ruled out?
Ruled out.
Brought out to a later
Ruled out,
stage.
thank you.
Councillor Rich, could you tell me where that fits into, Mr. McFerrin's?
I think that he brings a reduction in cost to do with media. I think he actually quite specifically raises it,
Administration.
Yeah, this is
In relation to,
sorry?
Vincent's one to do with 55.
Yeah, that
With
one there.
administration.
Yeah, no, they're saying that they can't see how Vincent
Yeah.
raises
No, it
it.
doesn't relate, it doesn't mention that.
Can we just?
It doesn't relate to the submission.
Employee costs in number 59.
Number 51, correct?
We're dealing with 55.
Should come up at 59, I apologise.
Can we vote, sorry, Mr. Point of order, can we please vote, consider 55 and then move on?
I think we.
With the
put
recommendation
that
of
in
no
block,
change.
55 through to 58, if you like.
In 55, I believe there's a section about administrative costs.
Which would be a media units.
Where is that,
It doesn't mention.
Yeah, but that's council's, that's council's response, that's not his submission.
So the submissions aren't here. I can't see the submissions here.
Yes, they are, Don.
They are.
On this piece of paper.
I can read out the submission if you like.
Can we just put this one to the vote and just, no change, please?
I'll put that one up as 59.
Can we just move on?
So, happy to put 55 through to 58?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, the order at the moment, as I've seen it, is the item that councillor Richards asked that service level in the meeting unit be reduced to 100,000.
Which I have accepted to the fact that the,
Thank you.
so in block form, 55 through to 58.
Save money for us.
55.
Through to 58, block one, do I need to move on?
How about
Councillors? Somebody wish to move in block form, 55 through to 58?
Yeah.
We've been railroaded here, Mr Mayor. We've spent hours and hours on waffle from some councillors today. We've got submissions that people want to put in, and they're all being ruled out of order because you're fussing around trying to find a word in a sentence.
Well, Councillor, it's up to the.
Well, you'll need to give us time there.
Why don't we adjourn and this is,
Point of order, I actually would argue that we are here to consider the submissions, not the extra which we want to put in them.
Point of order, Meg, this morning you get.
Councillor Edwards.
Mr Mayor,
Thank you, councillors.
if we're expected to prove where we've found this stuff from by someone saying, no, it's not there, you're going to have to give us time to look for it properly.
And that should have been done prior to.
No, they're making the points now that it's not here. I have to find the proof. It's in the submissions at the back. I haven't got time to find it instantly.
I can't rule on anything that comes in, it's not
It's up to
related to the actual speaker that's presenting.
And how do you know that? Have you read all these submissions now, right
I have
now?
in front of me, which I'm feeling as you bring the
We
topic
just
forward.
instantly read through 10 submissions,
No, there wasn't no 10 submissions. It was
55,
the ones
53,
you
whatever.
Thank you, Sir Councillor Hill.
Consider submissions put up there on our agenda.
So, 55 through to 58. Do I have any?
Oh,
no,
sorry,
no.
it is in here in 55. It is in here.
We'll read it out.
I'll read it out.
Which I asked for.
Council pledged 6% plus rates each year to pay off large debt. When debt was paid off around 2012, council kept the rates at 6% when it could reduce them to 2%. The effect is that council accumulated 4% each year for the last 4 years of unrequired rate revenue. Council planned to spend this amount instead of returning it to the ratepayers by way of rate reduction.
That's a difference to actually paying it.
No, it's not. It's
Okay,
asking
so-
for a rate reduction.
You asked
Thank
me
you,
to pay
Councillor
it.
Hill, I'm fine for that, and I do accept it now, we can put it up on the screen, the previous statement, motion.
You got a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah, seconded by Councillor McKeown.
Well, where have we written?
The motion is on the screen, Michelle.
We just need to capture so we're getting this is so
Are we back to 55?
Yes,
55
55.
with councillor Hill's wording.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you missed the next bit.
I don't understand, the chair rule wasn't applicable, but now the chair's ruling is applicable.
So Councillor Rich, I ruled that was up to Councillor Hill to find it in the item,
Absolutely.
55. He was unable to do that until he showed me that it was actually in the item.
Point,
So
I
he's ruled when he brought it to my attention. Okay?
question, earlier on today, you never put that level of discrimination on anyone else's. Why has it changed?
I disagree with that.
Fair enough. Do you have a live recording to go through?
We'll go through it.
I will.
Okay, councillors, please, if we progress any further, we need to up there, Councillor Hill, is that as you stated?
I'll read it.
No change.
Yes, that is correct.
Can I raise a point of order on this motion? The two things, I do understand that the intent might be similar, but they are actually different motions. Now, the submission is different to the motion. One is asking for it to come through rate reduction, which is the one that Vincent Morfuni has asked for. The motion that's before us is asking for those funds to come directly from general reserves to be drawn down. Now, two very different things. One is taking a money grab now, out of reserves that are there, and one is a future reduction. They are different.
I'm happy to put this motion together.
Just vote.
So do you have a seconder, I believe?
Yes, it was Councillor McEwen an hour ago.
Do you wish to speak on the motion?
Yeah, I'll speak in. All right. We have got a situation here where the previous councils, over a 10 to 12 year period, I believe, paid off a massive debt that the Shire was in by charging 6% rate rises annually for that time. In 2012, the debt had been repaid, and the 6% rate rises continued for the whole of the last council until rate capping came in. So the ratepayers were being charged 4% per year extra. When I requested at the time why we were still charging that amount when the debt was paid off, the response was we want to spend it on something in the future. I believe that turned out to be the municipal office project, which is now being canned. That was my belief. Precinct, which is now being canned. So the public do have I think, a realistic expectation, a reasonable expectation that they should get some of that money back. This amount effectively would mean that no one had a rate rise compared to the previous year. They would pay the same rates as the previous year. It's an amount of 840,000 from an amount I estimate about 16% overcharged amount. That comes to about 6 million. So from 2012 to 16, when they've been overcharged by 4% per year, that accumulated 16 million rates that were going to go to the municipal office project, but now don't need to. So they do have an expectation, I believe, that they've been overcharged and they should get something back. It is not possible to give them back the whole amount. We've got cash flow to look out after, and we've got to be prudent. This amount is something that we can return from the general reserves. It does not affect the working capital ratio or our strategic aims in the 15 years. It doesn't reduce any services at all. There's no service cuts here. And it doesn't prevent the general reserves continuing to rise over the next 4 years by another 3.5 million. So we've got plenty of money in that bank account to give a small amount back to the ratepayers. And I think that this council should do this as a minimum because of the amount they were being overcharged in the past. And I hope this council will support this initiative because the ratepayers are finding it tough out there, especially the ones who are at the bottom end of the income area. They do have a lot of trouble. I know there's plenty of people who have enough income to pay the rates and they don't mind that, but we have to look after all people in the Shire. So we need to reduce the rate burden. This is one way we can do something in the short term before we can make any significant changes to council that will have a flow-on effect that will be able to reduce the rate burden going forward. So I recommend this to council.
Reserve.
Thank you. I just would wonder why this wasn't raised last week when we had that financial modelling exercise and the offer to go, okay, do you want a big project, do you not want a big project, so that we could actually really make an informed decision. I'm not saying you're incorrect in what you're saying, but I haven't seen and understand what the implications of that might be. And we did have an opportunity last week to look at those after the project, after the presentation. I'm not questioning that we would all like a rate reduction. We also want a lot of projects. So, and we're saying, you know, let's put money into this, let's put money into that. So, I'm not averse to looking at that when I would fully understand what that actually meant, that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? No other speakers?
No, we'll go.
Sorry?
No,
No. So, so you want to speak?
yeah, because, we talked about a 6% rate rise every year. I think I just read out before, farmers out of 320, only 140 received a rate rise. The implications of this, what is the general reserves there for? And some of it's there for unfunded super and liability. This is insurance. It doesn't hurt to have a safety net and a safety blanket, and you need to keep your reserves. This is just ad hoc. We don't know what the long-term implications are out further in the budget to do something like this. And I don't, when we talk about the lower income people, the rates are according. There's no municipal charge, and it was spread out that those rates are a lot less. The high-end properties certainly, and rate owners, they certainly got a lot bigger impact on them. So this is just badly thought out. No long-term consideration in this. I just find it not necessary, and nobody's asking for a refund.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. The other councillors may come. Back to you, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's interesting when you look at the politics at the moment and the level of trust in government. We're at record low levels. We've now got over 60% of Australians not trusting governments. The reality is that rates on a compound basis have risen 7.9% until last year over the last 10 years. Rates are rising faster than electricity prices. And it is materially affecting people at the bottom 10%. Some of those people are paying between 10 and 20% of their income on rates. And we're talking about very low incomes. And it really does materially affect them. The reality is that with a boondoggle that was going on for $32 million that was in fact for a municipal precinct, and it was stacked in the budget for future needs, we've actually charged a significantly greater amount of money than was required to meet our asset renewal and our capital expansion program. The reality, Councillor Skinner, is that all of the capital projects that we've endorsed are fully funded in the long-term financial plan. Mr Lovis did add a question in one of the last presentations. Councillor Hill asked, what would be the effect if you drew down the general reserve fund on the working capital ratios, and Mr Lovis said there would be none. This is prudent. It is about time we make a stand for the community, not for stacking money into reserve funds. This is a small contribution. I understand that to really reduce rates through time requires a proper strategy being developed, but this is a token of our good faith to the community that we've heard what they're saying and we're prepared to do something about it. And the reality is that our rates are significantly high, and I understand the reason why. We've got a large dispersed population and it's difficult until we grow the Shire or have time to improve productivity and performance, but this is a down payment of faith and trust in the community.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Do you want to conclude, Councillor?
Just rebuttal a few comments made. Councillor Skinner says, why wasn't this raised earlier? I believe I made the point a week ago that we don't have any time allocated for councillors to talk about anything after the submission process. There were many, in fact, I think all the changes put forward today, they were not discussed anywhere earlier. Nothing was discussed 7 days ago. I wanted to talk, rethink what people had said. I wanted to look up their submissions again and come up with some sort of plan. That takes time. I'm a full-time teacher, do other things as well. So I don't think it's realistic to knock something out just because why wasn't it raised earlier? Nothing was raised earlier, and we did not get the time to discuss it as a group, which I was requesting. The long-term implications, Councillor Brunt said she doesn't understand the long-term implications. Councillor McEwen was correct. The question was asked by me of Mr Lovass at the time that it had no effect on the working capital ratios at all. He then went on to explain how if it was put into the reserves or taken out of the reserves, how it had no effect. And as for badly thought out, I find that insulting. I spend a lot of time on my council work, Mr Mayor, and I believe I'm pretty good at getting things right. And I find that comment insulting. It is a well thought out solution to a complex problem of how to give money back by way of rate relief when we have got rate capping, where if we reduce the 2% rate rise to 0, for example, to give that money back to them this 1 year, we would have that 2% reduction forever, and we can't afford that. So I think I've come up with a novel solution that allows us to give the people an effective 0% rate rise for 1 year only, which does not cripple us for the next 15 years. This has no effect on the long-term plan or our long-term savings or anything at all. It's a very small thing over the whole 15 years, and we should do this for the people.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Put this to the motion now. Sorry, we've laid them up to the vote. All those in favour of the motion?
Councillor McEwen, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rich.
Okay, all those against?
Councillor Brunt, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Brown, Councillor Argento and Councillor Keele.
Okay, the motion is passed. Moving on to, are we going to
Yes,
go-
no, we're putting the other one because now that we've been able to work out that Jeff Vincent does mention to do with costs, I'd like to reinvigorate the reduction of the media unit cost by $100,000.
So,
Under which one?
which one?
55.
55.
It's 55
Just done
spends out
55.
there. Is there a second stage? Okay, yeah. A new motion, yes?
I believe that most professionals in this day and age have the ability to communicate for themselves to the media. I don't see why. I think we currently have a budget of $420,000 per annum. I think to the people that we're talking about, the rate reductions and all those bits and pieces and the difficulties that they're having in their lives.
I'll second it.
The difficulty they're having in their lives, I would assume that we could at least try to get some of sort of service costs down a little bit. I think a reduction of $100,000 out of $420,000 or thereabouts to do with the media unit is a reasonable. I think $320,000 is still a reasonable sum to be able to do the work that the media department does in the South Gippsland Shire on an annual basis.
And do we have that wording?
It was up there somewhere. There it is.
Okay. I've seen that, we've got a secondary, Councillor Hunt, do you wish to reserve? Any wish to speak in relation to this, Councillor Edwards?
Thank you. Just without having a breakdown fully of what that current expenditure is in terms of salaries versus, say, newspaper advertising or other things, then I don't feel actually informed enough to make that decision in this current budget. I'm happy to review it next year, but without that information and knowing what the breakdown is and what impact that would have, I'm not going to be making that decision today to move that. But happy to review it next year.
Okay, any other speakers? Councillor Brown?
We've seen it in the rating strategy. Pick on a unit. Just pick on somebody. And that was the vacant landowner, so you could give something to someone else. This, I don't know what the impacts are if you did reduce the service levels. We asked for a standard. We asked for good governance. We asked for transparency. What do you call it, with the community consultation. It is getting late and I'm starting to work out. Consultation, transparency, and we do that through the media. So we need to be very careful when we just,
Please, Councillor.
when we start just saying, let's chop it, let's cut it. We don't know the implications. So no, I won't be supporting it, and I'm with Councillor Edwards, who says, well, we can review it throughout the year, but certainly not just like this. Not ad hoc like this.
Councillor.
I'd probably like to say something fairly similar. I'm happy to look at the service levels across the Shire. I hear what people say, you know, we need to review it, etc. I think that doesn't really attend to it, and I also suspect, well, it's against what my understanding of our role is, which is we can direct the CEO to reduce service levels or reduce a budget or something like that. I'm not sure if we are allowed to specify a certain unit, or whether that's interfering, and I'm just questioning that, whether that's interfering in sort of administrative
Okay.
You can ask a question of the new
policy.
You wish to answer that question?
Is that, is my understanding correct that we as a council have no authority to do anything, to direct specific cuts from specific departments?
That's
We
fine.
can, right, my mistake then.
It's reduce the service by $100,000, what that looks like, I'd have to go and work it all out.
Yeah, we need
That
to
would be
know
up
what
to
we
you,
We
do.
can't.
and we don't.
We can't.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I would go along and say I'm happy to really look at this over time. I feel like that's one we don't actually know. You know, is it our traditional idea of what media is? I don't know exactly what they all do. Is that any part of the promotion and branding, the thing, economic tourism, is that part of the
No.
arts and cultural strategy? I think all the teams work together, so. Thank you.
Any other speakers? No? No, Councillor King.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, when I was in an earlier reincarnation and a director at this same place, the media unit was run by one person. It is now up to 2.5. I understand and support what we've done in terms of social media and the fact that we do need some additional resources for that. But in my view, as in a lot of organisations now, a lot of the media functions can be done at a senior officer level. And indeed, we've always got 3 people. And what I see happening quite often is that we've got council staff issuing releases when we've actually got 3 journalists sitting in the room writing stories on exactly the same thing. I believe that this is a reasonable reduction to a service level and can be met. And indeed, councillors were all provided with information on the staffing and the cost of the media unit in the last week. So it's not correct to say that we weren't forewarned or forearmed.
The impact, I think, the news was the impact.
Councillor Hill.
Yes, we were sent the information in the last week or so, which detailed the jobs that were done in that area, what were done 4 years ago before the restructure, and the staffing levels. So basically we've been shown that we used to spend about $180,000 roughly a year on 1.5, 1.8 or whatever workers and what they did. What they did was minimal sort of stuff. It says so in the report. Then after the restructure, we added on some staff and we added on a whole stack of other sort of things that were already done in the council somewhere else or whatever. Anyway, it came to a big increase. Went from like $200,000 to $450,000 roughly. That's an increase. And we can specify a reduction in a service level, and this is what this is doing. We've had all the information given. We can make this decision.
Councillor Rich, obviously that first.
Thank you very much. Look, I hope we do support this. Look, you know, when I see whole page advertisements in local papers saying South Gippsland Shire is changing and working for you, and I'm a councillor, but I really haven't seen any change, except for the fact that spending more money on telling everyone that there is change. I find that to be quite a strange oxymoron, I think might be the term. I need to look that up. But anyway, I would like to see that some reductions, and this is once again, part of this is sending a message to our community that we are listening to them. That we're not just sitting here going, wait a sec, no, everything's changed, but we haven't actually made any change. Because that's the feedback I'm getting from the community at this point in time. You know, yeah, sure, we've got a new veneer, we walk around, we shake everyone's hands and say, yeah, that's great now, we're a new Shire Council. But really, tell me what's actually changed. Because I tell you now, the feedback I'm getting from the community is no, there hasn't. Rates are still pretty high, still got problems with roads. All of the same issues that are going on in the past are still going on. This is the topic. So I am asking, here we have one unit, and I can't specify because I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to say don't spend money on papers or employees or this, that and the other. All we can do is say that service level in that area, we would like you professionally to go away and find some savings. And that's what I'm asking here, to find some saving in our budgets so that we can put that perhaps towards roads. Perhaps we can put it towards areas in which will actually make an impact on the people's lives in this area. So, you know, I really love the pushback on this from the people that want transparency. This is transparency. This is saying, let's show this community that we are making some cuts that will move money from one area to other areas which hopefully will impact their lives. So yeah, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy for the professionals, but they are professionals in our media department. And I've got to say, going from $420,000 to $320,000, and I cannot specify. You're right, Alison, we're not allowed to. But that's all right. Councillor Skinner. But that's okay because we have professionals that work in our shire, and I would like for them to do this wonderful professional job that I know that they can for our community. So therefore, on that basis, I would ask for you to support reducing some of our costs in the immediate past.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. So put this to the vote. So, Councillor,
It's about, yeah.
would you like to put it to the vote, please? All those in favour of the motion as it sits there?
Is Councillor Brown, Councillor Rich, Councillor Hill and Councillor McEwen.
Okay, those against?
Councillor Brunt, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Gento, Councillor Hill.
Motion's
Motion
lost.
lost.
Okay, reverting back to the original motion. That no changes to the council plan will be made.
So moved.
So Councillor Wright moved, and seconded, Councillor Keel,
Happy to put to the vote.
put it to the vote. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Mr Mayor.
Good. Now, councillors, is there any items amongst
58, please.
58, so we can move to 56 and 57?
Yep.
10 o'clock. Who wishes to move that?
That, and just say that no changes to the council plan
Plan,
and
sorry.
budget be made.
Yeah, that no changes.
I'll move that way, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Kieran, Councillor Keel, put to the vote. Yes.
All in favour? Councillors?
Hang on.
That's unanimous, Mr Mayor.
56.
This is 261.
No, 56 and 57.
Now up to 58.
58. So, Mr Anthony's various topics.
Have we done
58.
58.
I'll read out 58,
You're
please.
moving, Councillor Hill?
Yep.
What is your amendment?
Is the typist ready?
What are we up to?
58.
We're up to 58.
Okay. That council establish a council committee
You're gonna retreat it. Do you have that, Councillor Hill?
Yes, I am. So I'll read out. The council establish a council committee to review council's compliance and enforcement policy, and that it seeks appropriate input from the general public and from people who have had concerns with council's enforcement of the policy.
I'll second it.
Is the change to the council plan?
I'll second it.
Slow down, so
It's the council budget, sorry, plan.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll accept that.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Rich. Okay, Councillor Hill, please second.
We've all had people in the community complain about their experiences in the process when they come across the council enforcement process. And we know there's problems in there. We've got a policy for the enforcement area, and I've got a view that it's not been followed. We've got big issues in this area. We need to set up a committee to investigate what's going on with the policy and whether it's been conducted properly and how the general public are perceiving this. We need to look at the problems that are happening, because at the moment people don't have an avenue to address their concerns to council other than finding a councillor who will listen, or I think they feel pretty much vulnerable, and unable to respond to the tactics that they feel are being applied. So we've got to solve this problem. Our satisfaction ratings are 47%, that's a fail. And I believe a lot of those satisfaction ratings come from people's interaction with council. And this is an area of concern when they interact with council. We've got examples we could mention. Person who thought they were doing the right thing by the community, has a stray dog, gets the dog in, calls the local laws to come and get it. Local laws turn up and start issuing him fines. So, I mean, this sort of behaviour doesn't go down very well with people, and they're trying to help the Shire, trying to do their bit, and then they get done for whatever. So we really need to get this.
Councillor Rich, reserve. Yeah. Any other speakers? Councillor Keeling.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the last council did an extreme and large amount of work on the council's compliance and enforcement policy. I've got absolutely no problems with the council's compliance and enforcement policy. It seeks first to educate, then to seek compliance, and then go through the legal processes. But a decision was made at officer level to start down the track of going on the fines. And if you've noticed that our legal fees have gone through the roof, and so has our fine revenue, but it's interesting. I was speaking to a prominent businessman in the community, and he said our compliance area is a deterrent to business, that they are extremely difficult to deal with. That's not everyone, by the way. This is a cultural issue amongst some, in my view. The problem that we've got, particularly if it's in the planning area, but also in other areas, it can be the same effect. There is a real concern on these people to actually lodge a formal complaint, because they have in many cases, a working relationship with council, and that has to be maintained, and they're very reticent to do it. This process allows people to come forward in a sensible way, not in a witch hunt. But it's interesting. Currently, I have got 5 complaints, which in my view are serious. One is neither here nor there. 2 is interesting. But when you've got 5, and I'm just one councillor, where people are saying that the policy is jumping to the fining and enforcement right at the outset, when people are saying, I've got a number of these now, I'm attempting to get them documented and brought forward, but they're basically saying that they're being threatened with fines at the outset. I had one particular person, which is an old case, had a discussion about a building which didn't have building approval, had planning approval, went and saw a particular officer, and I don't wish to name them, said she had to restump. She rang 12 people to restump. No one was available within the time that was given for a demolition order on the house. She went in, spoke to the council officer and said, yes, that's fine, it will be okay, and next day she gets a demolition order. This is hurting us. It is there are probably 3 or 4 issues that are really killers to us. The condition of roads and some of the infrastructure, the high rates, the issue of transparency. Well, it is to do with the issue. What I'm saying is that this is one of the big issues. And when you've got an average satisfaction rating of 47%, which is artificially high because we've got a customer satisfaction rating of 62%, anyone in a business would say something's wrong. We need to look at it. I think that this would be, again, something that we can do in a tangible way, in a safe way for people to lodge their complaints, to see where and how the enforcement and compliance policy is being implemented, and if, indeed, there are serious deficiencies in that. This is hurting us. This is a simple thing that we can do, which again can help restore trust and faith in council.
Thank you. As per one of Councillor McEwen's items earlier in the day, I'm actually on 2 sides on this one, because I don't actually agree with establishing a committee for it. However, I am hearing similar things, and not from all not about all council, not about all council staff, but there are some that we're hearing a recurring theme on, and so that's, you know, that is the CEO's responsibility to deal with that. We need to call on him, and I think that's part of, you know, that's Tim's role as the CEO, Mr. Tim's role as CEO. We've got to channel that through his measures of, I guess, staff coaching and officer training to make those changes. And so I am hearing them, and I feed them back. When I hear them, I feed them back, and I think that's our role to do, is to make sure that he can hear them, because if we're not passing that on, then that news is not getting through, and then that paints a fuller picture of him to be able to actually do something with. I don't know how we could actually by law have effect on that, but I am hearing the same kind of tone, and we've got some wonderful officers, and we've got some officers that probably know, from what I'm hearing, really know their staff. Perhaps their bedside manner is not being taken as well, and that's one of a better word, but I think we need to continue at this point in time to continue to feed that back through the CEO. He is our channel for these sort of matters, and then if they're not being addressed, then we can address it in a different way. But I don't agree with anything such.
Here we are, Councillor McEwen and I agreeing on the first part of his statement, and that is that we have reviewed the compliance and enforcement policy as exactly as it comes. Compliance, get compliant or we'll enforce. Now we have reviewed it, and it is a good policy. Now what we have to encourage people when they are, anybody that's, I got fined $13 today, and I wouldn't do anything about that. But that was my fault because I didn't pay my cat's registration on time. I was going to say, no, you're on camera. But I didn't pay that registration on time. That is my fault. I can't blame anybody. Now, nobody likes the law after them in any capacity, but what we have to encourage complaints is to lodge those complaints into the CEO. There may be a recurrent theme of an officer, and that is his role to deal with that. If those complaints aren't lodged in the right place about any particular officer, that won't be handled because they're not being lodged. It's no good holding on and a councillor knowing 5. I know mine, I got $13, but anyway. But anyway, I have paid the tax. And the thing is, nobody likes enforcement. And I don't think people understand the show cause letter, but you can work through it, and you don't just get told to demo it, you get to show cause why you're in trouble, so take it from me, and you may be able to work through it. So, no, look, I don't have a problem. Under government count, there's no need to review the policy. The policy, as Councillor McEwen said, is a good policy. It is good, it's workable, and we're talking about councillors getting in the space. This is legislative. A lot of this stuff has to be done. We have to do it by legislation, and we'd be not neglectful, remiss in not doing our duty and leave us in a position where we could be sued as council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I'll just see the headlines now.
I'm getting tired. I'm wearing the...
Brad, you're on.
Don't do it to me. Don't do it to me.
I'm really pretty much reiterating. My question once again was, are we meddling in the administrative processes here by trying to establish a committee? I think Councillor Edwards' comment and Councillor Brunt channeling it back through seems to be the way to go on that, and I would wonder who would be on that council committee. So I believe we should review what we're hearing, like reflect what we're hearing, should I say, back into the organisation. So if there's always complaints about a certain area or a certain method of doing things, then let's give our CEO a chance to rectify that.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Any other speakers? Councillor Rich, what do you reserve?
Yes, I did reserve. Thank you very much. Do you know, it's interesting, Australia has some of the best anti-corruption and siphoning of money laws in the world. Yet at the moment, some of the largest corrupt flow of money is coming into Australia because we don't have the proper compliance with the great policies that we have. So it's really good to have a really good policy, and as I understand it, we have a fantastic policy. But having a great policy doesn't necessarily mean that that's the outcome that we get in the best interest of our community. Now, I hear a lot of blind faith from many of my fellow councillors in our CEO and our public servants. Now, I think we've got some wonderful people in our public servants, but I don't have blind faith in anybody. I have blind faith in the results that we see. Now, if we see results and if we get community feedback that tells us that there are issues out there, then there are issues out there. So I think it's one thing to say, well, okay, well, you know, therefore I've got blind faith that someone else will deal with that. But I actually think, once again, it's our responsibility to really and truly make sure that these type of issues are in the best interest. We need to be collaborative. I use this term the whole time because when we are adversarial, it costs. It costs money from the Shire to be able to fight it. It costs money from the other person to be able to fight it. The amount of energy and time and wastage that goes on when we start being adversarial and fighting one another is such a ridiculous thing. But that is what this is about. We either are adversarial in the way that we do go about our compliance, or we're collaborative in the way that we go about it. This is specifically what I'm talking about. So that's why I support this. And once again, I hope that you do. I hope that you say, well, okay, look, yeah, we do have a great policy, but how do we make sure that that policy is working effectively and efficiently for the people of South Gippsland? And that's when I come to that term of collaboration versus adversarialism. And I really hope to drive that point home because it has been a theme across the place. I hope we become a collaborative style that works with our constituents, both internally and externally. I'm not seeing it at this point in time.
Okay.
Look, I picked up on an issue with based on some of the responses over there, which I'd like Councillor Rich to agree to change. If we could put in the words after excuse me, let me speak. Establish a council committee to view the implementation of.
The policy's good.
Just spoke on the.
No, excuse me. We were allowed to withdraw it and then put back the new one. And I do take on board, it's not a compliance and enforcement policy I have an issue with. I accept that it is a good policy too. It's the implementation of it and how the people who, general public who have come across it, interact with it. We have to set this up as a committee. I don't know why some of the councils have an aversion to a committee. We had some really good committees on our last council. The best one was the Finance Committee. We spent 60 hours in budget discussions in the Finance Committee, whereas this year we had 6 hours because we didn't have a committee structure to investigate issues in it.
Oh dear. Please proceed.
We need to have a committee, we need to have input from the general public who are affected by the implementation of this policy. To not do this is to say to people who have had an effect here that they're not happy with, we don't want to listen to your concerns. We're happy just to pass it on to the CEO or whatever, and yeah, okay, nothing much will happen. You'll still have to wear what you've gone through. None of your issues will be addressed. Question from Councillor Skinner about meddling, but this is not meddling. We are supposed to represent the ratepayers and we are supposed to listen to them. I don't believe with the amount of concerns each of us have had individually that we can address that just by listening to whoever finds us in the street. There's a lot of people out there, I guess, who haven't got access to us, who are too scared to pick up the phone, who don't know what to do. We need to approach them and say, you can submit confidentially about your experiences with the enforcement and implementation of the policy. The community needs this. We as councillors have a right to represent them and to hear them and to set it up in a proper structure, not leave it to the officers to bring us back a briefing for half an hour. We need to put more than half an hour into this, I believe. Oh, sorry, no. The other thing I'd like to mention is I'm hearing from many councillors in the room their subjective opinions about things without any data. And whenever the suggestion of let's get some proper data on something, which is what this committee would get, they don't want to know. They're prepared to rely on subjective thoughts, impressions, whatever, whoever said something to them, and that is what they're basing their decision upon. I don't think we should be doing that as councillors representing the community. We should get proper data. In this case, it can only come if people come and talk to us. The show cause letter was mentioned. Yeah, I've got an example of someone who got a show cause letter at the same time as a letter saying it's all okay. And what did they make of that? They were going to get something bad happen to them, and at the same time they were given permission to go ahead. They didn't know what to do. It's not about the officers here, right? It is not about officers. I don't know what it's about. It might be about some officers. I don't know. Until we see hard proof from people who come in and say, this is what happened to me, I don't know it's officers. It could be anything. We have to investigate what it is. So I recommend this to you, councillors, and I hope we'll get at least 5 people to vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Hill.
I'd like to make a bit of a point of order. We've changed that motion, I spoke on it, and we've changed it.
The motion just refers to establishing the council committee.
The intent of the motion.
It's changed.
Implementation of the
And,
council's compliance. To review the implementation. I think there was agreement in the room that the policy is fine.
Yeah.
And this relates to the actual implementation of the policy. Am I correct?
Yes.
I think that still relates to the original. I'm happy to accept it as it is. Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
That's Councillor McEwen, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rich, Councillor Gento, Councillor Skinner.
Okay, those against?
Councillor Brun, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Brown, and Councillor Peel.
Okay, the motion's
Motion's carried.
carried.
Uh,
Okay.
59?
59 separately as well?
Yes.
Yeah. 59. Midnight, in relation to various topics. So, Councillor Hill, do you have that motion?
59, I do. That council... I'll just wait for the typers.
Which one's this?
59. 59.
Middle of the page.
Okay, I'll source that.
Yeah.
Correct, Councillor? That's correct.
Yes.
And do you have a second for that? Councillor Hill, seconder. Okay, Councillor Hill, wish to speak on the motion?
Okay, the history of this Shire is that we add on staff every year, probably an average of 1 staff member per year. In between those increases, we have budget discussions, going back to the last council, and we generally find some productivity savings in there, which reduces some staffing level down, but then magically it's still increased by the next budget. I don't see justification for a constantly increase in staff levels. I see so many areas within the Shire where we can be more efficient, more productive, where we can look at different solutions, the way we run things. And yet, until rate capping, it was easy just to add on extra staff, add on extra costs. I believe that the CEO can affect a rate cap to staff equal to the budget 12 months ago of 262.5. Just like we have a rate cap into rate rises, I think we can have a rate cap into staff going forward. Productivity savings that can be found by the CEO throughout the year can result in reduced staffing. We have a 10% turnover of staff annually, so through that we can find some savings without having to make anyone redundant. It's not a case of trying to make people redundant, but we can, with normal attrition of people leaving, going somewhere else, adjust the way we conduct our business. And the media unit is one way we can do that. This is asking the CEO to come back with an overall reduction over the whole 265 staff of about 2.5 people in total. That's 1%. Industry works on at least 1% productivity improvements each year, annually. It's asking the report to come back from the CEO. It's not giving him a time frame. It's up for him to come back in an appropriate time frame with a range of options to get that reduction. He's not limited. We're not directing him, but we are asking him to trim the cloth to fit.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Gilman, reserve. Do we have anyone named councillors who wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Brown.
I'll note that we previously in the arts strategy, by adopting the recommendations in that, we've actually put on a staff member. Yeah, but that was 100,000 to go to an arts officer.
No, resources.
It's in the council plan, I believe. Is that correct, council?
It's a recommendation.
Clarification.
Do we have?
I understand it's $100,000 to implement the strategy, that's where it stops.
So,
That's why I kept saying make it flexible.
It could be for a staff member, it's been alluded by many.
it's well and truly been alluded by councillors that it is for a staff member. Now, I don't know what service there, when we do this, is actually affected. And we talk about someone leaving and we just don't re-employ. I don't know. It doesn't always fit. One leaves here, but it's a planner that we're missing, and someone in the enforcement area, it's someone in the community strengthening. Do we do away with our events? And oh gosh, help, she's not here. Events officer, our grants officer. So, and we just don't replace them. We need to think of this, and I'm not sure that this on the run is just a let's do this. This is a good idea. Be opposed for that. It sounds good. It sounds good, but is it good? What's the effect we're going to have on the organisation? And I'm unsure. So I'd need to know where that's coming. That the CEO prepare a report on a range of options for reductions to achieve this.
No, Councillor Smith.
I think we've had a range of submissions to the council plan, the council budget, many of which are talking about tight fiscal times. I absolutely understand that at the same time we're saying, oh, let's give the rates back, let's reduce the media unit, let's do this. We're also saying, but we need a footpath there, we need a culvert there, etc. So it is a juggle. However, I agree with Councillor Hill's proposal on this, and to ask the CEO to bring back a report on how to reduce, or no, it's not actually reduce, it is remain the same. Is that correct?
No.
No, reduce the proposed next year one to be the same as this year.
No.
So it lost the date.
It's a 2.3% plus 3%.
So reduce the levels, employment levels for next year's budget to last year's budget. Missed a year.
And you want to put an answer?
Okay. I do think we do need to tighten our belt a bit. I'd like to probably see the report rather than impose a level. I don't know whether that's counterintuitive or not.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Sorry, that was a bit of a messy statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is one that, look, I'm happy to review down the track, but I'm not on the spot tonight on this one. I also would like to raise that there's two major things that we've got coming up at the moment, and that is the hack services and the VICs, both up for potential major changes to our structure. And I think we need to take account of what impact our decisions in those spaces may have here as well. As I have alluded to a few times during the day, in the arts strategy, it does not have to go to an arts officer. It could go to an arts officer. It's about which is the most effective way to get those objectives achieved. And that could be a person, it might be another way. I'm also very conscious that if we contract things out, that could be another way of the same things being on the book. So I'm just cautious of that, and it could cost more. However, at the same time, I'll agree and disagree on the other side too, that it's great to have a more agile and lean organisation where possible so that we can move in different directions. So I think maybe if we take this on notice of, that we try to say, okay, well, no new staff potential numbers, no increase at the moment, that would be a great objective to get to. And that in the following year, when we've gone through the hack services review, when we've done the VIC review, and we can actually more sort of say, okay, when we go to a second budget, we've really got our heads around this stuff in a more informed way, and we can say, okay, here is what we're left with as our core services, and here is our wish list, or our discretionary services, if you like to say, as a better way, or community desire services. And then we can go, okay, what do we need to fit that bill? And some advice on that. But that's, I am hearing loud and clear that we need to keep things tight and agile, but I don't know that bringing this back at the moment is quite right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Just like to speak on the motion as well. I have some concerns in regard to EFTs and what exactly would happen if they were replaced with contractors. That may possibly even cost us more money and than actually the full-time staff. Or if there's some part-time people who are employed, that would also increase our costs. So perhaps if the motion was worded a bit differently, it may be suitable to treat an outcome there. Okay, any other questions? Any other councillors? Councillor McKeown, you reserved. Sorry, Councillor Rich.
Once again, we're having the same conversation about, we do need to find savings, and we do need to spend money in other areas. So the question really comes down to, do we have the balls to make some savings or not? Because it sounds to me as like no one really wants to actually put any sort of chopping block on anywhere. Let's not do that. Let's not actually make savings. Let's actually just leave everything the same it is, not rock the boat, so therefore everyone in the community is happy. But are they? That's what I'm looking at once again. Once again, we have a professional staff here. They're very good, and times are going to get tough. We do need to spend money in areas where it's going to benefit our community in the the best possible way. We have to prioritise. And there's got to be some tough decisions made in that prioritisation. And so, yeah, look, it's great to always go, well, okay, let's just leave that till next year. Let's get a report, I might be interested, da. Well, you know, I think that a lot of people in our community were waiting for that this year. So what are we doing? We're just going to keep on, it's going to be the same response from next year. They're going to wait a tick, you know. For instance, the moment I hear that we can move costs from an employee to contractors and it goes up, then I say that what I hear there is that we don't have faith in our executives. Because our executives should be looking to save that money, not to sit there going just sort of like, you know, shoving it around like a soothsayer. We need to find ways to deliver the outcomes for our community. And I would really like to start seeing us have some, you know, hard like to actually make some hard decisions. Let's put it that way, it's a much nicer way of putting it. Because we've got to make them somewhere. You know, I really want to see what we all want this shire to grow. We want our economic growth, so we have to start talking about priorities, alignments, how we actually get that funding and how we get that growth happening, how we become collaboratively so that we work in a leverage of every dollar spent getting $1.50 return, rather than adversarially sort of going like, you know, sort of dollar spent we get 20 cents return. So this is just another one of the measures that I simply going, it's as much as saying to our community, yes, we are trying to save some money. We're not even being specific about it. We're not even telling the executive exactly how they should do it. We say, come back to a report with us on how you can make some savings so that we can start using those savings in other areas where our community has great concern and requirements. So therefore, I'm going to support that on this basis.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McEwen, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All of the people around this table were voted in by a community who wanted substantive change. What I'm hearing, and I respect that they're genuine views of fellow councillors, what I'm hearing is that we're deferring taking the tough decisions. You can't do that forever. One of the lessons I've got from this process is that we spend far too little time as a team of councillors and as a team collaboratively with staff going through the planning process. We didn't invest enough time in that, and that's a mistake we have to rectify. But getting back to productivity savings. Edward Deming, I think he's deceased now, is the Dean of the school around agile and flexible and lean manufacturing. And what he's said is very simple. What gets measured gets done. If we go back to our last plan, 95% of what's in our council plan did not have a meaningful outcome measure. They're all throughput measures. This is creating a target to achieve. It is realistic. Most government agencies, and they did it for too long, have had a 1% productivity bonus. This is reducing the staff EFT level by 0.07%. The productivity rise in Australian workforce is around 1.5% per annum. We've had a culture, I think former Councillor David Lewis described it as one where we just keep on spending. But we've kept on spending on the back of a 7.9% compound rate rise, which is unaffordable. If you look at, and I agree with the comments on shared services or contracting out can be a false way, a false economy, but I've got confidence in our officers. But may I give you just a couple of areas where a very simple thing can pay off, and it's not pie in the sky. This has been done by many organisations, and we're starting to look at it anyway. One of them is the GPS tracking system. Wherever that has been implemented, the savings in transport logistics are somewhere between 20 and 30%. Now, that's one potential avenue. If you look at digitalisation and cloud computing and a shared service model, wherever that has been implemented, you're getting savings approaching 50%. Now, it does take time, it can't be done overnight, but what we're asking for here is the first principle of Edward Deming in his whole philosophy of lean manufacturing is that you have to set a measurable target. That's the first step. We can't afford to defer that to next year or the year after. because there's an accumulative effect. If we implement this target this year, we can work collaboratively with the council's CEO and executive staff to say what are the realistic things that we can do. And hack services, for instance, could generate some of that EFT savings because the information's could do it. But there are other areas that we can do. But until you start to put a clear target in, until you start to focus attention on how could we achieve this, you don't achieve anything. That's the reality. So I would urge us to work in strong partnership with the council's executive team. Set a realistic target, 0.7% savings of staff. When the productivity rise in Australia is double that, it's just over double that, 1.5%. This is the only way we're going to turn the council around. The time is past for pushing off decisions into the future or saying we can't do this. The community voted us in to basically bring in changes, and we should do that.
Just to rebut a few things. A couple of councillors, including the Mayor, mentioned contracting out. To me, that is not a solution to that issue there. Contracting out is just moving the expense around from one area to another area in the budget. It is not satisfying that. Now, someone, Councillor Brunt said this is like policy on the run. This is not. This is a response to the submission process. People have requested this. It is a valid response. The effect is trimming the cloth. It's deliberately worded so that the CEO has total control over what comes back by way of report to council. We're not limiting him in saying you must do it this way or that way. He's got complete authority to come back with options of his choice to fit that bill. And I would be very surprised if a CEO of this calibre can't find 1% saving in his staff. He's got 265 staff. He can make savings there without doing anything to anyone. Other shires, and Basco's one, I believe, is in a really bad situation. They've had to make, I think, staff cuts, quick ones, resulting in $900,000 savings, I believe. Now, we're in a really good position here because we don't have to make quick staff cuts. We can do things sustainably. We can make productivity savings that reduce our staff number without having to go out and do any cutting of staff numbers. But if we don't do it now, rate cap is going to catch up with this, and at some point, we're going to have to do something we don't want to do. And when someone leaves, the CEO can re-employ in that position if he needs to re-employ in that position. He might be able to find someone in the organisation to do that job that in some other area maybe isn't required anymore. That's his prerogative. That's his flexibility that we're giving him in this. He can come up with the options and produce a report back to council. Hack and Vic, that's not in this time frame, and it's not something we know the answer to, so it has no effect on that. So I think that's covered all the options. I recommend this is one of the best things we could do here today. It's not directing the CEO, as I said, but it is giving the community a direction that we're working towards, and it does, as Councillor as Meg said over there, we will be working through this sort of thing going forward, but we have to set the priority now, otherwise it won't happen. I urge you all to support this.
Thank you. So we'll put it to the vote.
Could we?
Put it to vote.
Sorry. Well, just in terms of the wording.
It has to be, Mr Mayor, point of order, it has to be voted on. It's been moved.
I'm sorry, but we just had a case just a couple of motions ago that we did change it. I think we're actually not that far away from the
Point of order. Point of order. You've moved to the vote. No one else is allowed to interrupt now.
That's right.
You're pushing us to a no.
That's the local
You might
law.
vote yes.
You might have got a yes out of this.
Surely you want that direction, councillor, because the amendment may be slightly.
You might need to listen to it.
Really
Get full consensus.
It's your choice
Do you wish to hear
then.
it?
I'll listen.
I'm happy to hear it.
Okay, it's just a concern over the wording. I think that I actually get some of the intent of this motion, but it's just the wording I'm concerned with. And by having it worded as it is, it almost needs to be two different things. So we've got, at the start, it says reduce EFT levels proposed for 2017 to 264 to the EFT levels of 2015-16 of 262. That's actually a direction there. And then we've got a second part which says, and that the CEO will prepare a report for council on a range of options. That's actually two different things. So if we were to change it, that a CEO prepares a report for council on a range of options and how reducing the EFT would impact, or something along those lines, that you're getting the same result, and I could actually vote for that. But when you're pushing me to go the other way, I'm...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify what Meg's saying? Are you saying if those two things were separated points, that you would be happy with them?
No.
Well, as
But that
they
way
are at the
round,
moment, they are actually meaning two different things.
I dispute that, but I'm happy, because that's very clear. What I'm saying is the target we want to have achieved is a 2.3% reduction in EFT. The way of doing that is by giving the CEO the power to come back to us with whatever options he thinks is sensible in terms of the organisation. I think it's coherent.
I'm comfortable to ask for the CEO to bring back a report on what 2625 would look like, and then we can decide on that.
Is that acceptable to you,
If
Councillor?
I can respond to Meg saying, I view this as the CEO will make that reduction to 262.5, and he will come back with a number of ways that it can be achieved, and then council will decide which of those ways it will be. He might come back with a report that says we do shuffling staff around, or I might be able to cut this service out that we've identified we don't need, or who knows. But council will decide the option at the end of the day, after the CEO has brought that report to us. But we have to set the target, otherwise there's no target for him to work to. He needs that direction to work to.
Okay, we'll put it to the vote now.
Yes.
Can I foreshadow a motion then?
If this motion is lost,
If this motion is lost,
there's
that-
no day and night to hear all the other submissions.
that exactly what Councillor Edwards suggested, that the CEO prepare a report for council on a range of options to reduce the EFT levels to
262.5.
Yeah,
Isn't it FTE?
I don't know, full time. Oh, well, whatever.
Is that showing some
I'm
wording?
foreshadowing.
I'd like to vote on the first one.
To me, it sounds
That's the alternative if the first one doesn't go.
Put a vote on.
Yeah.
Take a vote, we'll go
Yeah,
vote.
so we'll vote on the original, Councillor Hill's original motion. So all those in favour of Councillor Hill's original motion?
You do the original after me.
Jerry,
Councillor
Jerry.
McEwen, Hill, Councillor Rich, Councillor Hill, Councillor Brown, Councillor Skinner,
Okay, those against?
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Argento,
Hang on, I don't think you
and Councillor Brunt abstained.
Hang on.
So,
That's
Councillor Brunt abstained. Lady,
I'm too tired.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Four.
the motion has been carried,
I would have went to the foreshadow.
and Councillor Brown's
That's all right. I can live with it.
Yeah. Councillor Brown has four.
I think we've got our line now, thanks.
Yeah, okay.
Carried,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's carried, moving on to 60.
60.
I've got an alternate motion.
Alternative motion to 60. Councillor McEwen.
I've sent it over, but I'll read it out, and then if they can't like copy, I'll read it out slowly. That the council establish a committee to work in partnership with the CEO and senior staff to develop a 10-year strategy to reduce rate burdens by 10% through improved innovation and productivity savings, streamlining the administrative structures and processes, and through improved business unit performance, and through growth of the Shire.
Okay, you have a second as well? Councillor Brown. Councillor McEwen, you wish to?
Are they ready?
No.
That's what. It's in the email, June.
Can you read it, just read it again, and Councillor McKeown, while we're waiting for that?
That council establish a committee to work in partnership with the CEO and senior staff to develop a 10-year strategy to reduce the rate burden by 10% through improved innovation and productivity savings, streamlining the administrative structures and processes, through improved business unit performance and through growth of the Shire.
Through before improved business unit. Yeah, through. It's not. No, improved business unit. At the bottom, doesn't it?
Sorry.
What do we do anyway?
Sorry. There's a slight amendment to that, Natasha. In the second last line, it should be through improved business unit performance. Through needs to be inserted after the comma. In the second last line up.
Next line up, after the comma. Yeah, it's right.
Through.
Through. Capital E at the front.
Nobody
At council. Council.
If we want to get rid of
Is there any way we can finish this at any other time?
Are all these last ones amendments?
Deal with the tribunal first.
No, we have to deal with this almost over.
It's almost over.
It's almost over.
Our agony is almost over. Or ecstasy, depending on your look.
Okay, so we have that motion up there. Yep. Okay, accept motion.
Yes,
carries.
yes.
It's going to be a long break because I'm going to get the
That's,
toilet.
that's second, Councillor Hill, Councillor Keown. Floor to speak on that.
Yes, I'll be as brief as possible given the time.
Right.
I don't know if that was appropriate. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The reality is, and the Whelan report documents this very clearly, the Whelan report was done for the Victorian government on the dilemma for smaller shires. What that report says is that you have a precipitous drop in the demands for operational and capital expenditure per assessment when you move towards 35,000 people. That's the growth component. The figures that I've done, and I have got a Masters of Business Administration and I have worked in councils, suggest that we could save $27 million if we could have a growth of 10,000 people. The reality goes back to what was the community looking for when it voted out 6 councillors? What it was looking for was a changed attitude. What it was looking for was for council laws to be leaders of the community, as they should be under the Local Government Act. This establishes, as Edward Deming would say, a clear target that we should aspire to. There are a range of ways which are listed in there. Improve innovation and productivity. Our waste management people saved us $1 million.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, I don't see how this relates to the submission.
So,
It's big non-submission, is it?
in,
No, it's number 60.
section 5 of the, total capital expenditure.
Once again, wasn't done by any other councils early in the day. Have to do this.
So you may proceed, Councillor Dillon.
Sorry.
Point of order.
Raising productivity and performance is not rocket science. We know what the elements of it are. It's looking at how you can improve innovation and performance, and we've got some very good staff who have delivered significant savings. but it's about putting in process a place which is in our council's plan at the moment. This is a target for them. It's also about looking at how you streamline systems and structures and processes in organisations. Organisations through time become bureaucratic, and there are avenues to look at how we could improve that. The business unit performance, in my view, if you start to look at it, is talking about caravan parks and what we do with them, whatever, and it's talking about places like Coal Creek. If Coal Creek is to be there, how do you reduce the deficit that's sitting there? And there are things that you can do. We actually, Councillor Hill and I presented, I think 2 years ago, a budget that could deliver these levels of savings through time, but it was rejected. The community is clearly expecting that we raise our levels of performance. The way of doing that is to work clearly in collaboration and in partnership with the senior staff to sit down and say, realistically, what could we do over the next 10 years that could deliver a 10% reduction in rates in real terms? Well, the Australian productivity rates are 1.5% per annum. If we simply had them and we were judicious, we could actually increase our levels of funding on things like roads and other things and still meet this target. Growth is about half of it potentially, and we've got a strategy in place with branding, with our new branding proposal and with our growth strategy in the plan. The community would see us as leaders if we were prepared to look at this and work through it. It needs to be considered, it needs to be done carefully and properly, but organisations have to. In UK, Cameron put a 30% reduction on the level of funding to councils in one hit. They actually raised their level of community satisfaction up to 67% by 10% during this period. But what they did is they looked at co-production with communities, how you can spend money, how you can get more money for the resources. They looked at digitalisation. They looked at a range of strategies to raise productivity and performance. Now, if we're serious, and given that we have got skills around this table, both officers and councillors, we should be able to sit down. Even if in the end of the day, we came up with a strategy to reduce it by 5% in real terms in the next 10 years, the community would love us. The community is looking for this type of leadership from council. And this, I think, is a sensible process where we work collaboratively and we have a target of aiming for 10%. We may or may not be able to get that, we might be able to exceed it. But if you don't set the target down there, if you don't set the committee structures and processes in place, we will be here in 12 months' time, having deferred a whole range of things which in my view should have been dealt with today if we're going to provide strategic leadership. The dilemma we've got is the more we delay action, the harder it's going to be when the crunch comes. And I don't know if people are watching China at the moment, but China's close to a major meltdown. Now, some people are saying it could be this year, some people are saying it's next year. If that happens in Australia, our levels of Commonwealth grants and state grants will start to dry up on us because there won't be money in the system, and we will not have the time to start doing the things that we need to do to raise productivity and performance, because you can't do these things overnight. It takes time, it takes investment. This is a process that will allow us to do that.
Councillor Hill,
Yes, so I'll reserve.
reserve. Okay, we have any speakers against the motion?
I think Councillor Richmond to speak first.
Against?
Four.
Against?
Four goes first.
Four goes first or?
He's asking.
Four go first or second?
First.
You're welcome to speak first if you like.
No, I'm happy to. I was only going to, someone said it could have been against first, that's the only reason I was going to
It's
wait.
against.
Against
Mr.
is
CEO.
first, is the movers.
It's in the local law.
So against is first, so if you'd like to go first.
Yes.
When you shut up, sorry.
So
Okay.
you're against, so there we go.
Okay. I'm not actually against the sentiment of part of this motion. However, I am against the first part of it. So I'm absolutely all for through improved innovation, product savings, productivity savings, streamlining administrative structures and processes and improving ministry performance and growth of the Shire. Absolutely for that. I'm not comfortable with it. It's another committee structure. and setting it to necessarily the rate, because I don't know that necessarily, I mean, I know that Councillor McEwen has quoted the figure of the population quite a number of times, and I do accept the economics of that point. However, I don't necessarily know that I accept that everybody in our community wants that, if that makes sense. So we don't want to lose what people actually come here for. You know, not everybody wants to be in an urbanised kind of environment. And I know that I was probably referred to by somebody earlier in the day as a bit of a fruitlet for suggesting something in terms of crowdfunding. But I actually think that we might be on the same page with something, Andrew, and that is I was looking up some things the other day about democracy and community input and how to get community democracy in place. And there's some, on the same sort of websites that you and I have been looking at independently, I think, but the same site in the UK, some of the local councils there are definitely using crowdfunding as a way of reducing rates. So they keep the council funding core services. So this is where I was referring to earlier, that we can, in our next budget, when we're a more informed council, that we do a serious review of here's our core services, here are our discretionary services, the ones that are the, you know, they're not legislated, they're the ones that our community may ask for, or different components of the community. And then we can look at those we need to fund, the core ones, the roads, the rates, the rubbish, etc. The core services that we're legislated to do. These ones over here, I know this sounds radical, but I would actually like to table it, because I've been reading about this quite a bit and thinking it's actually working elsewhere. If we were to reduce rates, and true democracy allows somebody to choose where they spend their money. So instead of us unionising rates effectively by taking big rates in and then us telling people how they'll get spent, and this is not for this budget though, but this is about a longer term innovative process that could actually be worth investigating. And I know it sounds radical, but to say we can reduce your rates, but we're also going to reduce all those discretionary services. And if you want to fund those, then we're happy to help facilitate and work with you to look at how that could work. And I think it's open for exploration. I'm not for, however, the first part of this motion. So I'm absolutely on board with innovation, productivity savings and streamlining and all the rest of it. The first part of it, however, I'm going to vote against it. Thank you.
Councillors, you want against?
No, I'm for against. Thank you very much. Meg, I'm going to call you a true believer, even though you just like to argue for the sake of arguing. And I mean that in the greatest respect, I really do. I've always said that you know, there is a much better way that we can deliver services to our region at a lower cost and a greater customer satisfaction level. And I think that that's what we're talking about here, how we get there. Now, I believe we need to start showing the community some actions, so that we build that confidence and faith and momentum and direction. And that is why I have supported many of the measures today that have been looking at ways that we can start to have the conversation about how we reduce those costs or rates or along those lines. Because I think if we push it out another year, then what ends up happening is that we don't get that momentum. We're not even asking for, in half of these measures, specific, we're going to slash and burn. We're not even doing that. We're just saying, let's start the conversation and let's start the direction that we can start to have goals and targets of reducing our actual overall rate burden and our overall fees and costs and expenditures, at the same time as making sure that we prioritise and work out how do we grow our economy so that we do have a better kitty of money. I mean, I love the fact that the one person sitting out the back here at the moment is the guy sitting there going, hey, I'm going to have to manage this budget when they finish having all these conversations. And I think that's what I mean. Once you set a direction, people, especially highly skilled people, they start thinking, how am I going to do this? They put their mind to it now. And so in many ways, that's why I'm supporting a lot of these measures. They aren't just fly by the seat of the pants. There's a lot of thought that's gone into the direction. I mean, for instance, when David Hammond came and visited us earlier on this year, all right, when he, from coming from you, my dear lady, I must say, I am speaking to the topic of reducing rates by 10% in real terms, which is exactly what we had that other from another area, and I'm pretty sure that this is the conversation we're going to be having when we go up to the future of government, They're going to be looking at how do we structure local government in a way that reduces the cost burden and increases the output in the customer service. And so the reason I'm asking for people to support this one is because it sets the conversation in the direction we need to go. We need to start getting all of our, both us as councillors and our staff to start thinking, how are we going to do this? Because I know that we have the capability and capacity within this room, and that is why I'm going, well, I think we need to start putting measures in place now. I get that you would like to see some more fleshed out, but these aren't even set structures. These are, let's have the conversation of let's do 10% reduction over 10 years to be able to get to this sort of direction. You know, what was it, 10 years? 10 year strategy. 10 years, so we're not even saying I want you to come and slash and burn tomorrow. We're saying we want you to start thinking about how we can achieve these goals, and we'd rather start that thought process and that ability now than we would in 12 months' time. Because hopefully in 12 months' time we're starting to build on some other things. So thank you very much. I hope that we do support it.
Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I totally understand different councillors here that they want to get productivity changes and turn the Shire into a lean, mean, efficient machine. I sort of agree with that to an extent. But there are, as we've already been briefed on in the last few months, it's possible what we might be going into is a situation with lower state and federal government grants. And I think what we're not really taking into account enough is even if it's 10% lower rate burden, the compounding effect that will have over 10, 20 years. And so it might not affect us, but it might affect future councils into the future. And the reality is, the way I'm thinking is, if we can get productivity gains in council, in the Shire, we should be using that as reserves and a buffer for these other potential issues with lowering grants potentially in the future from state or federal governments. And we need to stay within the rate brackets that we've already got at the moment in our current plans. So we've got that buffer to take those different headwinds potentially into the future. If we're going to try and put those productivity savings to lower rate burdens, I just think we might not have issues in this council, but in 10 years' time we could be setting the future councils up for a really massive crash, and I'm just not prepared to do that at the moment. There's just not enough, there's nowhere near enough information for me to vote for this as it is right now. So I think that's just something that people need to take into account when they vote on this tonight. Is the potential ramifications of only a 10% rate reduction. It doesn't sound like much, but it could potentially be huge.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
Establish a committee. We get on to here and it says develop a 10-year strategy to reduce the rate burden by 10%. That's a fact. That's what that statement says. And when we talk about growth of the Shire and it's going to save us a lot of money, growth in the first 10 years costs a lot of money. Is that what our people want, or do they like our Shire the way it is? We don't know that, and we're making statements here that we haven't consulted with the community. Councillor Brown's sentiments were very well spoken. We don't know what the future holds with the grants, we don't. And to bring in something like that, it could have enormous impacts into the future. And a 10-year plan, the faces around the table take a look, because I'm sure in 10 years' time, we all won't be here. And next council, 4 years' time, it may change. And a 10-year plan, they can do what they like. But to reduce the rate burden by 10%, it's just the impact could be put this council in a massive hole, and that they have to come out. Rates then aren't averaged out. They're not averaged out and a smooth flow through with rate rises. Then we see the 18% rate rises in a council in 10 years' time. The burden would be massive. Growth costs money because you need infrastructure to fit that growth. You need infrastructure. You'll need new kindergartens. There is so much you need when you start talking growth. It's not just about collecting extra rates. It's not in any way the rates are going to do everything, because the people will want more. They always want more. And I can't vote for that. I think it's irresponsible.
Just really quickly from me, unusually. I actually think we are the committee, aren't we, that are working in partnership with the senior staff, the CEO and the senior staff, and that's our job. We don't need to establish another committee to do that. I think we are the committee, we are the council that does that. And I believe that, I'm all for innovation and streamlining of administrative services and all of that creative thinking, but I won't support that because of the 10% over 10 years. But I'd like to see it, and I believe we already are the committee. We're always doing it.
I think I've got a few misconceptions to address here. But the first one, before I get to the misconceptions, is the talk from Councillor Edwards about her fear of being in a committee structure. The only way to work collaboratively with the council and the officers, Councillor Edwards, if you're listening to me, is to have a committee. Where else will it get discussed? In a briefing session? That is not collaboration, that is one-way flow of information. I don't know where the fear comes from. You have to have a committee. This is not asking for the 10% reduction up front. This is asking for a strategy to achieve it. If it's not possible, it's not possible. So nothing, you don't need to worry about, oh, it's going to reduce all sorts of things in the future for us. It won't happen because we need the strategy. If the strategy doesn't work, it won't happen. So that's the misconception I want to talk about, that it's a 10% rate cut. If you put a 10% rate cut through the Excel sheet that Mr. Lavash gave us, we would be bankrupt in no time. And I'm not suggesting that's what we're looking for. We're not talking about rate cuts. We're talking about reducing the rate burden. That is different. And I'll give you examples of how that would happen. If you increase the population by 10% and put them into areas where you don't have to develop new infrastructure, it's already there. For example, infill. Councillor McEwen did some numbers last year or the year before. You could fit easily 10% of the population into existing infrastructure sites around the Shire. So no additional cost to bring in 10% people, but they will all pay rates. So that puts the rate revenue up by 10%. You share it around, everyone else is already there. They've got a 10% reduction just from that. So I take what Councillor Brown said, but I believe he was misunderstanding what the strategy would come up with. It will come up with ways to achieve a reduced burden on each ratepayer, not a reduction in the rates collected. So you can support this because it's to set up a collaborative structure with the CEO and the staff to come up with ideas. Now, Meg's got a lot of fantastic ideas she comes up with. She's choosing over these, getting very excited about them all. Each one of those things, and I'm sure Councillor Edward would agree, each one of those things there, innovation, productivity savings, she mentioned a few other things, they are all big things. You can't just have a briefing on the whole issue there in one go. They're going to have to be tackled in committee structure. And until the report comes back from that committee structure, nothing will happen to the future rate revenue. And it is not asking for a cut in rates of anything. Not 1 cent. Not calling for cuts to rates collected going forward. It is calling for sharing out that rate burden amongst more people. It's calling for raising additional revenue through other sources than the ratepayer's pocket. If we had a way of raising $500,000 from something around the Shire, whatever, that can go to reducing the rate burden. We've still got the same rate revenue there. Someone came from this new $500,000, means we can actually cut what we collect from the ratepayer, but we still get the same rates. So Councillor Brown, we are not suggesting a cut to future rate revenue at all. So you can vote for this because it's a committee to be set up. It's a long process. This won't happen in 12 months. This is something that's going to take a few years, I believe. But we have to start it now to get the ball rolling. And nothing will happen until a final report comes back and council at that time, whether it's this council or it could be the next council, they'll review what's come out of that committee and they'll make decisions. But it is not going to cut the rate revenue. So if you can accept that's the fact, we're not cutting rate revenue, Councillor Brown and Councillor Edwards, if you can accept the fact we need to be collaborative with the officers on this. We can't just wait for something to appear from I don't know where with the solution. It's a big job, you know it would be. Then you can vote for it.
Do you want to know how to get my vote?
Thank you. Councillor McKeown.
Summary.
You'll lose it.
I wasn't voting, so there we go.
Councillor McKeown.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'm not so proud, mate. How do we get to that?
Mr Mayor, thank you.
Please.
There was a frame. It's interesting, obviously Councillor Edwards and I are reading the same websites and books, but I did actually present 4 years ago to councils planning 2 days that council should look at crowdfunding sources and it should look at community democracy and community budget. So those are on the agenda. The MAV conference, and I've been now to 5 or 6 of them, is basically talking about all of these things. This is not rocket science. This is not new. This is about whether we've got the will to lead or not. What that is calling for is only a report. And as I said in my introductory remarks, it might well be that would come back to us and say, look, for all sorts of reasons, we can only save 5%, but it's going to be in the later years. But it is not, as Councillor Hill correctly said, saying that we reduce revenue. Rates can still rise. The Whelan report is fundamentally done by the Victorian government, or for the Victorian government, and it says if you grow, your rate burden drops. And the graph is there. It drops from over 3,500 for a council under 10,000 to 2,500, and that's just for operational expenditure. So growth is part of it. If you look at growth, I agree wholeheartedly that we need to have a vision for where the Shire goes. Right? And that has to be a discussion in all of the towns and hamlets about what the future they want. But let's be honest and realistic. Our housing and settlement strategy has told us there is a capacity now, with no new rezoning, to have a population of 55,000 people. And that's likely to happen because there's a noticeable speed up of tempo of people moving into the area.
Could I foreshadow a motion if this one is lost?
The interesting thing, and look, I'm not blowing my own trumpet.
You have to ask, you have to respond.
Councillor McKeown, could you please proceed?
I might have a stroke at the rate we're going, Mr Mayor. Sorry, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I've been involved in doing between 50 and 100 business plans for large-scale private sector and public organisations. And the one lesson that comes out in strategic planning is unless you have a strong, hoary strategic intent, you never achieve your outcomes. Right? This is a strategic intent to aim towards. It's not locked in the print that we will do it. It is simply a report to council. But I am really concerned, as Councillor Brown is, I think that we're going into significantly difficult economic circumstances. I was one of the economists who predicted 2008. And there is a number of people seriously saying we're over levered financially, China's off the boil, and if that flows through to us, let's hope it's 2 or 3 years off, that's going to significantly reduce the money we've got. If we don't start to set in place some strategic targets with a strong strategic intent, we will not focus our energy and our efforts and our talents and our abilities to achieve it. At the end of the day, if this is successful, it is only a report on options. It could come back and say it's not possible, or it could say 5% is possible. But if we don't start doing these things, and we're all going to a conference tomorrow, where for the last 5 years they've been talking about all of these things. Now, at the end of the day, the community was asking us to provide leadership, and we have to have the will to provide leadership. This is really important. And can I comment back to Councillor Skinner? The reality is most councils have subcommittees. Not having subcommittees limits our ability to collaborate and to work with staff. Subcommittees are where things are driven. At the moment, we've got a process of briefings that are coming one way. We have not set up an efficient councillor-only session so far. We are absent in leadership. We have been absent in leadership. This is...
Speak on the motion.
I am speaking on the motion.
No.
This is an opportunity to show we've got the will to take the decisions and set some really decent strategic targets.
Thank you. Right on time. So I'll put that to the motion now. We can deal with this motion and then hear the next if it is lost.
No, you can't do that, but if you want to go that way, we'll just get lost.
If you foreshadow, do you have to foreshadow?
Yeah, most for the vote, so people vote.
So we go to the vote.
I'm pretty sure that's the go check.
Okay, so
Well, I did give the option, so.
That's what I understand.
if the motion is lost. So all those in favour of this motion?
Councillor McEwen, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rich,
Those against?
Councillor Brunt, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Brown, Councillor Champion, Councillor Hill.
That was very uncollaborative.
Motion is
They could have got the intent through there.
So can we not hear that?
So now it's that.
No, it was uncollaborative.
Motion is
It's not about collaboration, you don't want to-
It's back to the motion again. And then changes to the plan, or to the motion.
Up to the next item. No, we have to want it. No, we've finished. You can do that one.
We've got one more to do.
No.
Yeah.
There's no changes to the budget.
I do.
I move that no changes be made to the budget.
Well, yeah, councillor, one, two.
No, it's lost, it's gone. We've lost it.
You could have written another motion, councillor.
Can I get governance check on that? I don't think so now. Yeah, we had the opportunity before.
But you can,
Going back to six still.
so you can move it on motion.
Sorry, I
The motion was defeated, therefore you've got a right to move another alternate motion. Yes,
Number six.
yes you do.
okay.
So I suggest that you can proceed.
That's what we've been doing all day, isn't
Yeah.
Where's that in the law?
But this,
Well, you gotta determine what you're gonna do.
Well, you go back to the original.
Yeah,
that's
correct.
what we're doing, and then,
And maybe it's foreshadow another motion.
Yeah.
Mr Mayor,
Yes.
as has happened with point 55, after I completed my 55, Councillor Rich had one in the same number, so Councillor Edwards is allowed to put her own one up now.
I don't mind. If you like the option, it'll probably get voted down again anyway, but.
Well,
It might not though.
Could you please?
So long as it hasn't got couch surfing in it, it might get up.
No, it is.
Councillors, a foreshadowed motion can only be put during debate.
Yeah, which is why
Well,
I was trying
But
to
we've
say,
moved-
I got shut down.
You're no longer putting a,
She went to do
no
that
longer a
for a time.
foreshadowed motion.
It's an alternative motion.
Now,
It's now a new motion that you're putting forward.
Could you please bring up the motion that was there, because it's actually only a rewording of what Councillor Hill made. So if you copy and paste that, and then the new motion, the establish a committee for down to whoever it was, and then paste that into there. So I would be comfortable to work with this motion if it took out the words establish a committee. So we'd start with work in partnership with the Chief Executive Officer and senior staff to develop a 4-year strategy to reduce the rate burden by 10%.
Oh, can't do that.
Can't do it.
Can't do it.
No, we're not talking about
Go hard or go
reducing.
home.
No, but it may not necessarily be 10%. I'm open to movement here. What I'm trying to do is get it in our term of council as well.
You can't.
And
Yes, you can.
yeah, so I'm happy to move on
Oh, I
to
understand.
10%. And then down the bottom where it says unit performance and growth of the Shire, I'd like to change the and economic growth. And so put the word economic in there,
Which can be
not
right.
of the Shire, and take out of the Shire, the words of the Shire. Because my definition of growth here is not, it doesn't have to be in population.
Yeah,
The
it
can be
growth
either
could
or.
come from other avenues. It
Either
could
or,
come,
as
let's
you
say
say.
for example, can I speak please? If we are able to,
Just foreshadow that, you
Yeah,
can speak to it
okay.
once you move it.
thank you.
So, is that the motion?
Mr. Mayor, can I-
Can I suggest you change it to
Hang on a
5%?
minute.
No, can I say, really be realistic, you need to change it to 3%.
Yep, happy with that? Absolutely happy.
And that 4% is too much, because you're implying you're
Absolutely.
immediately able to get the productivity
Yeah.
savings you can't.
Absolutely happy with that. So, yep,
Okay.
Sense direction, I'm happy that we're going.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
no, work with, could just let me read that back to myself. Working in partnership with the Chief Executive Officer and Senior Develop a 4-year strategy. Doesn't mean it's going to be able, implementation is a different thing to strategy.
Yes, that's right.
So we're saying we're going to set the strategy. If it may or may not be obviously possible, but let's
Yeah.
see what we can do.
Yeah, I like it.
Just
I like it.
the 3% out and just leave it at reduce the rate.
I like it.
Hey, I think it's good.
3% is dearer
I'll
than
second
10% over 10.
We move straight to the vote then?
So
I'll second it.
It's more expensive.
You wish to put an amendment, councillor Buck?
No, I'll just be quiet.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to second that
I'd like to
motion.
see-
Everybody else second. So that
No, we're
is,
both for it.
It's a great amendment.
everybody
I'll vote
say,
on it if we don't.
see the motion up there? And that is, you're accepting that, it's written up there, councillor Evans?
And I'm seconding
Okay,
it.
seconded, councillor Gill.
It's over to 4 years, 4 years, 3%. And something strategy.
Okay, wish to say
No,
one
I-
more?
Not at length, I think I've covered most of it off before, but I want to reiterate that growth doesn't have to come through population. It is one possible way for
Yep.
growth, but it's quality more than quantity, is what I'm after. So, we could have 100 new houses in South Gippsland, but they might all be $100,000 houses, or we could, go for a mix, is it a nice way of putting that? Or we could look for other ways to improve existing businesses or new businesses or grow business. So it's about the economic growth, not necessarily about the number of people in the region. I do think it's good to have a stretch goal there, but this is about having a strategy. It's not something that we're going to, this is not a KPI that we're going to measure anybody against. It's about how, because it's actually measuring ourselves if we're doing that anyway as a council. It's not measuring somebody else, it's us that we're measuring here. Can we do this? And if we, it is putting a stretch there, but I think it's reasonable.
Can we
Councillor Gill, you wish to reserve? or-
I'm happy to put it to the vote.
Is there anyone else wish to speak? No? Okay, put it to the vote, all those in favour of the motion as it stands?
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Rich, Councillor Hill and Councillor McEwen.
Those against?
Well done, Nick.
Those against?
Brown,
Committee.
Councillor Jene, Councillor Keel and Councillor Brunt.
Can I move an amendment that the committee be set up with the
There's no
committee?
No,
Just
I don't accept any
We've got
further
one more
amendments.
thing to vote on and then we've got to get out.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so that one is done.
Go.
61.
There's no more, changes.
Do you want to put it in block?
Can I move 61 to the end in block?
No, I'd like to speak to the last one.
No.
No, just be quiet.
And was Councillor Hill for or against, just so we know whether it was carried or not?
Oh, so he was for.
Councillor for, she last name.
So it's carried.
Yeah.
I'll change my mind.
Okay, so we happen to move the remainder in block? No, we can't do that, so this is
We can do that.
Yeah.
What about the meeting in block?
But they're ran-
Actually, I'm happy to move the bit box. That's probably just not enough.
So councillors moving in
I would
block?
like to move that we adopt or we vote on all of the remaining in block. Reason being, we discussed this at length last week.
Can I clarify first?
Michael, second that.
All of the amendments.
There is amendments involved as well.
That's correct, including all the amendments as per our discussions.
That's the green text.
As per the green text. Do you want to say it like that?
Well, I'm not going to. I'm not. It's a longer story.
Okay, we have a motion, move to
Yeah, I'm for it.
vote in block form for the remaining
Maybe I'm willing.
items.
Go for it.
Except, for example, like for that one, just to clarify what I'm saying.
Councillors,
So
please.
63.1. Oh, no, it's this budget. Got it. Okay, I'm going back to my, yes, moved in block.
With the amendment.
With the green amendment.
To the council plan.
Yeah.
What are you doing there?
Yeah.
So councillor Skinner has moved that we move in block form to the council plan or the amendments.
Well, there's no change.
There's no change to the council plan.
No, I don't think you should have it. No, we're on, we should sit over here. Hang on.
So 63 to 68.
Including all the amendments to the council plan.
So from
Yeah, I'm
61
gonna-
to 68.
This is, we've discussed this and
I'd like to, single out 65, sorry.
65 for singling out.
what's 65?
Fish Creek, it's not in the books.
So that's for
Alright.
planning board.
Oh, God.
So, 61 to 64, it's already approved.
61 to 64.
61, okay, I moved it.
I'll second it.
Put it to the vote.
Put it to the vote.
Go vote quickly.
Meg.
Councillor Brown.
Aaron. You don't know what you're voting for, but
Don't
you're
worry
voting
about
for
That
it.
was for a increase in
10%,
councillor
we're
salary
not
of $100,000 each, and we're not going to be
Okay.
remunerated particularly well.
Now we're getting back to 65 now. Councillor Edwards, you wish to make a change to 65?
Yep, sorry. It's not to the budget, it's to the plan, in regards to, Fish Creek. So we're looking at submission 65 from Tony Walker of Fish Creek. And that is that the council, I should have typed this up differently, sorry. That the council facilitate understanding the level of community support in Fish Creek for sewage. And we might need to amend that once I've read out why I'm reading this. So the intent of this is so that we can ascertain whether there is strong community support or not for sewage in Fish Creek and help be an advocacy body for that. And if there's not, then we don't have a role to play, obviously, going forward. But I think if we look at, we've got a state election next year. Oh, I should wait and see what I said first, sorry.
Excuse me, before we go on, I'm looking for those words and I can't find them. Are
Uh,
they, is it in June?
No, I haven't, sorry, so I'll read it out. So, this is the council plan, and I'll just go back to Tony's actual words on this as well.
65.1 that no changes to the council budget and 65.2.
I've already done it.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Do
I'm
you have
just
your
waiting
motion?
for the word, I just went with the
No, they're all right.
they're not there. Have this in here, but I can't see them.
Okay, so 65.1, in that council play a role of advocacy in townships that, we're not just identifying obviously Fish Creek, but townships that demonstrate support for sewerage. It's an advocacy role, I think.
I'll second that.
Thanks, so we have the wording up there.
Can we ask for what percentage?
It needs to be 70%, 70% from the design, yeah. So let me say that. In the council play a role in advocacy in townships that demonstrate 70% community support.
70% or greater.
70% or greater, yeah. So it's not a budget item, and it is dependent on the level of community support for sewage infrastructure. Right. Have I got a seconder?
I seconded it.
Okay, so moved by councillor Edwards. And seconded by councillor Smith.
Now, although, yes, I do, thank you. Although this doesn't relate to a budget item, I'd like to actually point something out. And I don't go into that for Fish Creek that often because we are a small town and fairly self-sufficient. But when you look at the rates information, as I understand it, we're a contributor 3.5% of the rates of the Shire. Leongatha's 15%, Foster's 6%, Moving North is 4.8%, so actually not a lot bigger than us. Where Currumbarra is 9.9%. So any of those you correlate and you look at, when you imagine the services that we have at Fish Creek compared to those other towns, we don't actually ask for a lot. We don't have a library. We don't have any council facilities actually in Fish Creek. We have a couple of small garden beds that are done from time to time, and that's really about it. So I'm not asking for a budget allocation here, but what I am asking for, there is a contingent of the community in Fish Creek at the moment, I'm not sure what the percentage is, that are asking for, look, we'd like to see whether there's some options around sewage. We have a state election coming up next year. We have a federal election the year after in 2019. I think it is timely to see, can we help this community in a way to facilitate what is the level of support for any community, but what is particularly in Fish Creek, they're asking for this at the moment, what is the level of support in the town? The ruling from the, as I understand, sewage infrastructure has to be 70% or more of a community needs to be for it because that's becomes compulsory. The estimate that we've got on the cost of Fish Creek from South Gippsland Water is $4.4 million for the core infrastructure. And when you look, I'll just come back to that rating thing before. I'm not asking for money in this essence at this point. Maybe we might down the track, but let's see what the community level support is first. But when you look at what goes into Fish Creek versus the contribution that we do make, I think it's a fair ask to say let's at least help with the advocacy role of this part of it and see if there's not 70%, then that's fine, we can just drop it. Let's help the community to find out what we've got 70%.
Thank you. We are, do you wish to resume, councillor Skinner?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to be in support of this, however, I do want to put it as well, because I think that we should have advocacy for all of $47,000 per house is a very large figure to be, sort
I'm
of
not asking.
No. Yeah, I know that you're not asking for that, but this is what I'm trying to say is that as part of the advocacy, we need to be looking at both levels of desire as well as cost, because obviously the two interrelate with one another. And so the only thing to say is that I am going to support this because I would like to see every township have the ability to go and say, okay, we've got a list of priority sewer towns, and we will have some form of self-interest if we come from near those towns. But I do want to make sure that the cost factor is very clearly communicated. So it's not just to the community that do you want it or not. Because if we just say do you want it or not, then everyone goes, yeah, sure. But it's like, do you want it or not, and it's going to cost this much.
They know that.
Well, no, perhaps they don't. I'm just
some do, but
There's no debate across the table.
So other than that, I will support this motion because I would like to see, sewage going past. The other part is that maybe Fish Creek needs to grow to be able to afford it.
Townships.
You can't
Doesn't
show
say
that.
townships.
Councillor,
You know what I mean?
You can't prove that.
I am going to have a breakdown. Look, I'm 100% in favour of this. If we've got a commitment for economic growth, which can include population, we need to make sure that there is a capacity to sewer some of the towns. Fish Creek is a little gem. It's kicking well above its weight, and it has been systematically underfunded in terms of dollars per head for capital works. The thing I strongly support it, Meg. However, I do support the comments of Councillor Rich. If you remember, and I don't want to be harping on Coromandel Valley, but one of the savings that they made because the council looks after sewerage is that they had a cost in the budget of $92 million to build a sewage system, which they delivered for $36 million. There are smarter ways of doing things, so I think we need to link the advocacy to looking at what are the smarter ways.
Councillor Skinner, do you wish to?
I'm absolutely in support of this, investigating it with full transparency around the cost factors and advocating, I just think it's a no-brainer to support this. But I do sometimes wonder about the way we're going, oh well, this town pays that much rates and they get that much stuff. Tricky way to balance the books there, because I think a lot of small towns have just looked at how much rate Venus Bay gets, etc. So I think we need to look at things on their merits is more what I was coming at from that, not so much we pay rates, we don't get anything, because we're all part of the rate spectrum. Yeah, and I think we are trying to champion that with this council, but I absolutely support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Given that we've had two speakers for, we've got to the vote.
Can I just sum up on something with this one?
You want to do the vote? Councillors, all those in favour of the motion?
No, I just think that the cost is so
Okay, so we all those in
government.
favour, so that unanimous?
No,
Councillor Brown. Okay, so those against, Councillor Branch? Thank you. No?
We've still got another one.
So,
just
we
Can I didn't quite hear you, Mr Mayor, what did you call?
asked who was for, and the vote, and
There was one against.
Just the cost on community.
It's a perfect one to talk about, I think.
okay,
Councillor.
do we have consensus to do the remaining block form?
yes.
Yes, Councillor Skinner.
Move it before.
Councillor Hill. That will move the remainder, and get straight to the vote. All those in favour?
Didn't get anything through it this time of day.
So those the amendments that we're referring to there, just to have a look at that.
Please don't get up and wander away and pack your stuff. Please pay attention so we can finish this properly.
So that is no changes to the council plan or budget we made.
In the last, all of them.
But no.
And the amendments, adopted amendments.
Yes, there was adopted amendments that we've done like that.
Does that make sense?
Can you just hold a moment, please, while we just,
So all these extra words are going in now. You're going to put all these extra words in your council plan.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
Time
ask
working
Cole.
on without reviewing what these words are. Meeting's still live, you're being streamed. Don't forget.
I just want to read them.
Moved by Councillor Skinner and seconded by Councillor McKeon, I believe.
So it was moved by Councillor Skinner.
Yes. Who did you have?
So all those words are going in about human rights and all that stuff.
That's what I wanted to check.
Can we just roll back up? Can we just roll back up to read? Yeah.
The number.
No, it hasn't. We haven't voted. I haven't voted for this.
We voted
No.
We did these
Step
last
back,
week.
everybody.
last week,
And we did have, we had a vote on this. You can't go back and vote.
we had an indication or whatever. yeah.
No, we had a vote. People put their hands up. So this is the end, Mr. Mayor. No, we've had the vote.
Oh, that's right. Oh, it's done. We just closed the meeting, wasn't it?
So just
Take it on.
Yeah.
before we close the meeting, just like on behalf of council to thank the community members for their submissions and they'll be advised in writing, of course, of decisions based on what we've discussed today. Thank you, councillors, for your contribution as well, as well as staff and officers.
Thank
The
you.
meeting is now concluded.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Can't last
Kill switch
No, they describe a challenge to that.
No, they were my words.